Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 262. My name is NBZ, and this is really, it was really episode 1 of the new decade, Bally, is what it is. So we just reset the clock. We didn't do it back when we changed the name of the podcast, but now I propose we just go back to episode 1 again. Just makes things a lot easier to count
this is
upwards.
just season 2.
The season two, finally. Yeah. It's taken 10 years, but we're in season 2 of the show. So, Bally, what are you excited about season 2 of the show? What are the new things that are going to happen?
There's going to be a Switch 2, next
that's true.
year.
Yeah, very true.
And I don't know. I think that's the most exciting thing that's probably going to happen. Oh, and maybe GTA 6 is apparently going to come out sometime.
Now, here's the thing,
everyone
Bally.
seems to be excited about.
It's one of those things, this is where I find myself sometimes where I'm like, those people online who are like, I don't care about Nintendo, Mario, Zelda, mean nothing to me, just doesn't stir their heart at all, right? And I'm like, I don't understand you people as human beings. What is wrong with you fundamentally? But then I sit here on this other side and I'm like, Grand Theft Auto, it does literally nothing for me. My heart is stone to it. I do not have any kind of feelings whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I see the rest of the world just losing their fucking minds about it. I get it, it's exciting. It's one of those things that only happens, these days, once in a decade. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't, I'm just not a fan of Rockstar stuff. So that's just,
I know that the wider world is losing their minds, but I was WhatsApping you today sort of saying, I don't think my podcasting circles are necessarily losing their mind. I think they like GTA. I think they put it on a par probably with Red Dead, just as a very broad general statement about most podcasts I listen to. So yeah, it's interesting that they're not kind of losing their minds, but then you look at the number of tweets and retweets that original tweet had for the announcement of a trailer is just absolutely insane.
It is, yeah. It's the normie game for normies, right? If you're
it's the Mario Kart for cool kids.
yeah, exactly. It's very much like if you know nothing about video games, you've heard of Grand Theft Auto, right? You know what that is. Yeah. So it's unsurprising that it's gaining a lot of attention and probably is going to take away a little bit of the thunder from Jeff Keighley. But in any case, I'm sure that it will be interesting to see what people say about it. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how this game does, how it's received, all that sort of stuff, because I feel like there are some companies, some games that come out, right? Where it's this has been years and years in the making, and then it comes out and it's well, it maybe just didn't do what people expected.
Open world games have evolved quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the last 2 years, look at Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom, and they're doing insanely different things to what open world games were doing 5 years ago, let alone when GTA 5 came out. It's a lot for that game to live up to, no matter what they go for with it.
Yeah, I feel like Starfield's falling into this a little bit, where it took a decade or whatever for Starfield from the people first hearing about the name Starfield to the game actually releasing. And it feels like they didn't move with the times necessarily, which is interesting. And I wonder if that'll happen to Rockstar and GTA. But we shall see. There'll be more than enough people talking about it in the next few weeks, months, years for us to dwell on it too much. So, Bally, why don't you tell us what's on today's show of the podcast?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about a couple of the games that you've been playing, MBZ, and then we are going to go through some GOTYTDACOTYs that listeners sent in. And then for the second segment, we are going to go through our personal GOTYTDACOTYs. So that is our top 10 games that we played this year that didn't actually come out this year.
Absolutely. A long tradition of this show. And one that I always enjoy every time we come around to it. And it feels like everybody has taken on the moniker. Everyone writing in uses it now, which is fun. So
we're just saying we didn't really give it the biggest plug in the last episode.
I think we forgot to, because the last episode was our 10-year anniversary, and so we weren't really thinking.
We were quite preoccupied with 10-year anniversary, so we didn't give it the biggest shout out. And that did not stop people writing in. They were like, the time has come. It's that time of year. We have to write in our GOTYTDACOTY lists, and so we got a bunch that we'll get to.
Yes, absolutely. It'll be a good time, and it's very interesting. I love seeing what the community is playing and what old games continue to come up over the years. But Bally, I've got a couple of little games I just wanted to shout out and talk about. So one of them you'll see I've written down watermelon game on the list. Now, Bally, do you have any idea what I'm talking about when I say watermelon?
I have never heard of either of these games.
Okay, great. So, watermelon game, more commonly known as Suika game. So this is a really weird story where basically this game came out on Nintendo Switch 2 years ago in Japan in like 2021. And I don't think it did super well. It just was on the eShop and it was there, it existed. And then like a month ago, it got localized into English. And so it got put on the eShop across the world that wasn't just Japan. And I started seeing in like YouTube recommendations and my YouTube feed, there's a bunch of VTubers who just start playing this game called Suika game. And I'm like, what is this thing? What's going on? And then like a week later, I see an article saying Suika game sold 3 million copies on Nintendo Switch. If you go on the Switch right now and go to the top downloaded games, it's likely number 1 or number 2 or number 3 right now. It's only like £2.50. And it is, it sold like millions of copies at this point in time. So it's one of the most popular games on Switch right now. The reason I think one of the ways I knew they had broken through is I saw that Nick on Twitter was playing it. I'm like, if Nick is playing it, then that means it is broken through to an audience who I think Nick plays like lots of games, but he's gonna kind of gravitate towards ones that are in the public consciousness or that like a lot of streamers are playing or people are playing. And so I saw that and I'm like, interesting. This has definitely like become a thing. And so what it is it's basically just like a mobile puzzle game, if we're gonna get down to brass tacks about what it really is. So here's the idea. You have this block, okay? You have this kind of cube. It's not a cube, it's a rectangle. You're dropping stuff into it. I guess Tetris-like in a way. But what you drop is you drop these fruits. And so the smallest fruit is a cherry, and the biggest fruit is a watermelon. And what happens is you drop a cherry, and if you drop another cherry next to it, they will combine into a strawberry. And if you drop another strawberry onto that strawberry, it will become a grape. And if you drop a grape onto the grape, it becomes an orange. Drop an orange onto an orange, it becomes, I think, a mango. And eventually it grows through these like 10 different cycles of fruit to become a watermelon. And it sounds very simple, and it is, but there's a lot of strategy to this game where you are dropping these fruit, and sometimes, like, there's a physics to it, right? So all these are circular fruit, and they have a kind of friction on them against each other. So you will drop down, these strawberries and grapes, and you might get to a point where you are not getting the fruit that you need, and you're like, oh god, it's like Tetris, right? You're waiting for the long block, but you're not getting the long block, and you're biding your time, and you're like, I want to pop this up here, and I hope it stays there. But because of the physics, because it's a you could drop a grape on top of an apple, but if the grape is dropped in a spot where it's a little bit on the edge, it will roll off the apple onto, underneath it or whatever. And so you are carefully trying to match these together to create those like satisfying chain reactions where you drop it and it's like boop, 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 and then all of a sudden you have something that is like transformed into a much bigger object, and you've gotten rid of a lot of your junk, and the screen is a bit more clear again, and you have a bit more space to work with. But the bigger the object is, the more space it takes up. And so the idea is that you want to, it's a high score game essentially, so there really isn't an end goal. The idea is just like drop all the fruit that you can in here and get the highest score possible. But I think really for me, I was like, I'm probably going to be not done with this game, but my goal is I just want to get the watermelon. And it's a lot harder than it looks to just get the watermelon, because to get the...
You got upgrade, and it's the top of the tree, right?
It's the very top, right?
Right.
So in order to get the watermelon, you need to have 2 regular melons. And getting to a regular melon means cherry to strawberry, strawberry to grape, grape to orange, orange to mango, mango to apple, apple to there's like 3 more in between there. So the biggest denomination that you get to drop, I think, is the one below apple, which I think I'm calling it mango. It's just like it's a larger orange shaped
grapefruit
thing. I guess it's a grapefruit. Yeah, right. Probably. Is that what it's saying? Is that you're looking that up?
I'm guessing.
Oh, you're guessing. Okay. Let's just say that it's a grapefruit. But like, that is the biggest one that it will let you drop. So it won't let you drop anything higher than that. So you'll never get an apple to drop. Apple's pretty big. So you only have like numbers 1 through 6, but there are, let's say, 10, 11 overall, right? So that's the goal, is you want to use these smaller denominations in order to eventually sticky all these together and then finally manage to get that watermelon. And it took me, I want to say it took me like 6-7 tries probably in order to do it. It's a great in-bed game. This is one of those ones where I'm like, right before bed, I'm just going to knock out a round. It'll probably take me between 10 and 15 minutes to do a round. And yeah, you just get on a roll, and it just is that satisfying feeling of clicking things together, getting things to squeeze together. And you have those moments of like, okay, so there's this strawberry, it's just like underneath this other one, but there's a bit of a gap there. So if I drop another strawberry in that gap and then I drop a bigger thing on top of it, the physics will push the strawberry down, and hopefully the spinning circular nature of the fruit will just kind of force it through, and then I'll get it to connect, and then it will become a grape, and there's another grape beneath it, and boom, 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 and it all just links together. It's really satisfying, really cheap, so I'd recommend it to anyone, honestly, if you just want like a game to play on the train, or a game to play before bed with a podcast, or just something to just pass the time. It's a lot of fun, and I think I feel like this can work on other devices. I think there's a bunch of knockoffs. Like I've seen a bunch of Steam knockoffs of it. There's like a website you can go to that's a knockoff. But I think the thing that makes this actual official version good is that it has this really nice sense of the physics model where the fruits will move around in a satisfying way, and you can manipulate them, and there feels like there's more strategy to it by having that stuff included. So yeah, I think that Suika game is very good and is very cheap, and you don't lose anything from just buying it and giving it a go and seeing what it's like. And yeah, I've got the watermelon, but I would like to get a higher score. Nick, so I posted that I'd got the watermelon on Twitter, and then Nick's like, now get 3,000 points, and I'm like, now I need to see what is Nick's high score, because that's the real goal here, is to beat him at this game. But yeah, the first time I got the watermelon, I got to 2,500, so it's not that far off. But I've looked at the leaderboard, and here's the thing where you just start crying. You're like, how the fuck? This just seems ridiculous. I think the highest score is like 14,000. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. How do you do this? Because here's the problem. The game is over when you overflow the basket. Again, very similar to Tetris, right? Where you hit the top, that's game over. If any of the fruit is over the top of the basket, that's it, game over, basically. Right. So I imagine once you have 2 watermelon, like that feels like the maximum you can do before something's going to get pushed over the edge.
So they just take up so much space.
Exactly. So I'm like, is the strategy here that people are just making it so
watermelon?
Yeah, not even last minute, but like manipulating it so that you don't get watermelons at all until you have the maximum points, and then have all the watermelons happen. That might be the case, but anyway, it's great. Everyone should give it a go. It's super cheap. It's fun. I like it. Watermelon game. The other thing that I've been checking out is a game called Time on Frog Island. Now, this is a fun thing because, Bally, this is one of the first video games I ever assessed professionally. It's a game that back then it was called Trading Time, and it was very much I remember talking about it internally at the company and being like, oh, this is kind of like a short hike from a visual perspective and from
I think the new name is stronger.
Interesting, because yeah, I didn't at the time. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They changed the name to that, because I think Trading Time I think it's a bit more generic, but I think it spoke to what the game was trying to do. I would say this is a kind of a blend of a short hike and the Link's Awakening side quest, where you trade stuff, right? Where you get one thing from one person, give it to the other person. And so you are this little sailor guy who has crash landed on this island. The island is just filled with frogs. It's a frog island, basically. And none of these frogs speak a language. They only talk to you in emoticons, essentially. And so they will be like, so the first frog you meet, he's an artist, and he's at his canvas, and he, when you talk to him, a speech bubble comes up, and in the speech bubble, it's like, here's like a paint, and it's got like a question mark next to it. And so you look around and you realize, oh, there's a bottle of paint. I'm going to bring it over to him. There we go. Now he's going to start doing his painting, right? So that's kind of a simple introduction to it, how it works. And this island is pretty much open from the beginning, so you can kind of go anywhere and everywhere. There is a bit of a day-night cycle, so you will eventually get to night and you'll get tired and you'll have to build a campfire and fall asleep, which I think is a bit of a weird mechanic. I don't really... I think there's some things that use it later on, and I understand why it's in there, but it feels like early on it kind of limits exploration. I think part of my issue with the game is that I really love the aesthetic of it. It's beautiful. It has this very kind of soft style to it. It's painterly in a way, but it's a 3D look, but it's very bright and colorful and very poppy, and it's just a chill kind of aesthetic, which I think
looks amazing in this trailer. I'm looking.
Yeah, it's really nice looking and is really, really soft and fun in that way. But I think it's because the frogs use these kind of emoticons to talk to you. You feel overwhelmed at the very beginning, right? Because I think the difficult thing about a system like this, where it's like Link's Awakening Trading Quest, is in that game they start you off and then you're like, here's this thing, and you keep this one thing and you'll eventually chain it together. Whereas this game is more like you can kind of approach any of these 4 or 5 things in whatever order you want, and whichever one you figure out first is the one that you're then going to start the chain reaction. But starting the chain reaction in the first place, I actually think is the hardest thing in this game. The idea is because your boat is broken, you need a canvas to fix the sail.
Is the whole game the trading line, more or less?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So you need the canvas, and I wouldn't say it's a straight trading line where you have to do one thing to another. They're kind of segmented, so like the one where you need to get the wheel is its own segmented kind of quest versus the one where you need to get some wood to fix your ship, or the one to get the rudder. There's interconnections between them, but yeah, I think just the starting point for them is a little tricky, just because you're overwhelmed. There's like 12 different frogs on the island, and in the first day I just talked to a bunch of them, and a lot of them will like pop up this emoticon of like, here's the face of another frog, but I haven't seen enough of the frogs to recognize them all yet, so I don't know who you're talking about. And then sometimes there'll be question marks and exclamation marks next to items and objects that I have not found yet, or I don't know if I find them in the world or if they are part of a chain yet. So I think that first 2 or 3 days of the game, I actually didn't make a lot of progress. It was really about exploring the island and finding stuff and figuring out, is this useful? What do I use this for? How do I do it? I'm not asking for more tutorialization. I think just some of the ways in which it goes about letting you go in any direction, it feels like it should have introduce things
have more like pointers, or like you don't even need a formal tutorial. You can just have little reminders. Hey, actually, this is how you do this, or
or just getting you started on a chain from the beginning to begin with, just to ease you into it a bit, because I do think it just gets a little bit.
Do like a really mini little chain at the start in the first 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like a it's like the what do you call Orchard from Witcher 3, or the Great Plateau from Breath of the Wild, right? Like small spaces, like mini versions of the big space you'll eventually explore. And I think that that would have definitely helped. But I did really enjoy it. I think it only took me a couple of hours. It's like 2.5 hours long, and you'll have these fun realizations of, in order to, so there's this axolotl who's like lounging on this chair. In order to get to them, you can get to them a couple of ways. I kind of got into their pen by going up the mountain, then dropping down, because there's a guard blocking the way. The guard won't let you in, but I kind of like circumvented it by just jumping into the pen from a mountain above. And they are asking for a flower that is a sunflower, but it's like blue, and you're like, wait a second, I've seen sunflowers, but I haven't seen blue ones. And then you realize that when it rains, the sunflowers change into a different type of flower, this kind of blue, kind of rainy sunflower. And so you have to wait until it rains, then go to that spot on the island in order to bring it back to that axolotl. So it's those little things where you have those mini puzzles of, I've seen this thing, but how do I make it into that? One of them's like a frozen thing. A lot of people are asking for this frozen drink, and that involves going up onto the high mountain where it's snowy and finding, cold things up there to bring back down in order to synthesize this thing. So yeah, it's got a little bit of kind of concoction stuff to it, and like this whole quest of getting scarecrows' heads, and you use those scarecrow heads to scare away ravens from the fruit, and so the fruit kind of is then used for other stuff. So everything kind of links together in a fun way. And yeah, it's a very chill kind of little adventure-y, like I said, short hikey in its tone.
Is it
and
anywhere
kind
near
of,
as good as a short hike? Or
no,
is it just,
no,
no.
I
It's
don't
just a
think
bit clunky, and it's
I
mechanics,
wouldn't say clunky. I think it's just it could use a bit more direction that isn't. And I don't think, you know, when I say this, like, I like the fact that the game lets you kind of wander around and figure out yourself, but I think it just needs to ease people into things a bit more, and get things going. But yeah, it's very short, it's very neat, and I enjoyed it. So that is Time on Frog Island, and yeah, you can check it out. It's on Switch as well. So those are the couple of little games that I've been playing. But Bally, I think it is time to get into our listener GOTYTDACOTYs. Of course, if you are a new listener and you don't know what we're talking about, we're talking, of course, about Game of the Year that didn't actually come out this year, which we could use for our actual Game of the Year as well if we just change it to Game of the Year that did actually come out this year. But
you know, all these other podcasts, they're going to be doing their games that came out this year, you know,
yes.
and we're going to do that as well. But it's like, the nice thing about our show is we like to shine a light on games that didn't actually come out this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always been a tradition, always going back and playing old stuff.
Worked well when we were playing the Wii U and Nintendo released about 2 games a year. That was kind of where this stemmed from.
It's very helpful. It's very helpful. But I think it's very interesting because I find that you know, people who listen to podcasts, they are very different to people who are on podcasts, because if you're on a podcast, you're always playing stuff all the time. If you're listening to podcasts, you're often going to be like, I want to hear about stuff, but I'm probably only going to play, you know, this thing that I, you know, bought a year ago and wanted to check out instead. Like, what I'm saying is a lot of our listeners, I think, play more older games than they do newer games.
Also, kudos to everyone for like playing 10 games, because we played ridiculous numbers of games, but we, you know, before the podcast started, I wasn't playing many more than 10 games a year for sure. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and I think we generally every year, I think we find that we get more of this list than the actual Game of the Year list. I think that's because again, most people don't buy new games when they come out every single time. But yeah, it's always a fun time. Bally, before we get into the listener GOTYTDACOTYs, do you want to remind people where they can send their emails? Because next week, in 2 weeks' time, we will want to hear your list for your 2023 Game of the Years, the ones that did come out this year. So where can they send those to, Bally?
Please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. And we also have a channel on our Discord server. It's called Emails. So stick your lists in there. And that's for games that came out this year. They can be on Nintendo. They can be non-Nintendo. We're going to do a non-Nintendo list as well as the Nintendo list. So you can just make clear what it is, and then you can give it to us.
Absolutely.
We'll read some of that.
For listeners, there aren't really any rules. We have our own rules for certain things that we do, but yeah, that's how it goes. Bally, would you like to read the first list?
Our first list is from Sullivan, who says, "Hello, gentlemen. I look forward to listening to the GOTY extravaganza because I almost never play games when they are new. I'm combining my lists. I hope you both can forgive me. Number 10, 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim. Number 9, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Number 8, Soma. Number 7, Grapple Dog. Number 6, Solar Ash. Number 5, If Found." They said, "Thematically, this game hit very close to home. I think the erasing mechanic was a fantastic way to bridge narrative and gameplay as well." Number 4, Mother 3. "Even after having the game for me spoiled many times over, it still hit hard. It is just as good as its predecessor, even though it is a very different game." Number 3, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. As someone who has not played Breath of the Wild since 2017, this felt like a very fresh experience. It definitely started showing cracks by the end for me though. Number 2, Metroid Dread. The finale was the pop-off of the century. Top-notch game. And then number 1, Anodyne 2 Return to Dust. I've never played a game that felt as made for me as this one. Aesthetics, narrative, and gameplay hit a perfect confluence for me here that will stick with me for many years to come. It is definitely an all-time top 10 as well. Sorry for all the words. Have a wonderful new year, and I look forward to hearing more hot takes soon. Sincerely, Sully.
Good stuff. I heard some good stuff about the original Anodyne. It's a Zelda-like game, very much in the kind of Minish Cap top-down visual aesthetic.
All right, yeah.
And I looked up Anodyne 2, and it feels like it's blending 3D with 2D. It looks very cool. It looks very interesting.
Wow.
So,
and when did that come out?
I think it was like last year or something, Anodyne 2.
Okay, cool.
I heard stuff about it. But yeah, no, that's very cool to see that. And that made number 1 as well. So Zelda fans out there, Anodyne's definitely one that I want to have a look at some point. So that's
nice
really
to
cool
see it found in there. I've heard a couple of podcasts listened to mention that this year. And we really enjoyed that last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great game. I just want to mention as well, so a lot of these lists I have cut stuff out of, so apologies that we don't read everything, but we just want to get through everybody and not give too much time if people have written full essays, which I appreciate and I thank everyone for. But yeah, just cut some stuff down, so that's just how it's going to go. So our next list is from Noah. Noah says, "Hey Bally and MBZ, it's the most GOTYTDACOTY time of the year. This is the second year that I have tracked my completed games on how long to beat, and like last year, I have some stats to illustrate my last year of gaming." So Noah gave a bunch of stats. I've cut down to the most important ones. In 2023, I completed 13 games so far. These games represent 454 hours of playtime.
That's the best stat right there.
It's a great stat.
Man.
Love that stat. My longest game was Persona 5 Royal, which I played for 140 hours on the Switch. So out of those 454...
I think we need to start lists on how long to beat because you get your hours total.
Oh, that's true. That's true. We need to make accounts on there. Yeah, that's the thing to do. That's a ridiculous amount. And
you don't need to read this last point.
No, I will. I will shout this last one out loud. My lowest rated game was Metroid Prime Remastered, which I gave a 4 out of 10. Brackets, I'll let NBZ speak on this one. Well, I still have to do that still. So.
Well, you're going to play this holiday season. You're going to play Metroid Prime, and I'm going to play Sonic Mania. That's like my Christmas game for when we've done our podcast, and we'll come back in January with some thoughts.
Could I ask for a better gift than Metroid Prime Remastered? Probably, yeah, actually, but we'll see.
The best gift you could possibly hope for. Yeah, they even remastered it for you. What more could you want?
I know, they're so kind. Anyway, now on to my GOTYTDACOTY top 5 list. Number 5, Return of the Obra Dinn. Number 4, Persona 4 Golden. Number 3, Hades. Number 2, Death's Door. Number 1, Persona 5 Royal. As you can see, 2023 was an awesome year of gaming for me. I have so many good memories from this year. Bally needs to get on to playing Persona 5 Royal for sure. Once again, thank you both for providing us with a year of excellent podcasts and fun conversations in Discord. The TNL community is awesome, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Best wishes, Noah. Well, thank you very much, Noah.
I'll get to Persona, but it's on my long games list, and I get through my long games very slowly. So at the moment, I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom. And then my next long game that I want to try and beat next year is Elden Ring. And
Elden
my next
Ring,
long game I want to try and beat after that is actually Witcher 3.
Witcher 3, so I would say pencil in Persona 5 Royal for like 2036, maybe?
We'll get there. We'll get there. And there's a few long games that came out this year that got in the way, like Octopath Traveler 2. So
by the time you get round to a Persona game, Bally, there'll be a new Persona game out. And it'll probably be better to play that at the time, I think.
Yeah.
So. We'll see. All right. Bally, you want to take the next one?
Our next one's from Albert. Says, "Dear MBZ and Bally, although Bally comparing the Beatles to the NES was my spiritual low point of the year, your podcast has provided me with countless hours of entertainment, so I'll forgive you this cardinal sin once. I didn't find as much time to play games as last year and have thus restricted myself to a top 5 GOTYTDACOTY list. Number 5, Yoshi's Island. Number 4, Kirby. Number 4, Kirby Planet Robobot. Number 3, Freshly Frosted. Number 2, Cuphead. Number 1, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'd also like to belatedly offer my congratulations for your recent 10-year podcasting anniversary. I, for one, will be sticking around until MBZ's big secret can be revealed in 2033, and I am sure there's many other lunatics like me. It's also made me realize that I've been listening to MBZ's voice on the internet for more than half my life now, which is absurd, but I guess that's how time works. A very merry festive season to you and your loved ones, Albert."
But it just makes me question how old Albert is. That's all. And it just makes me want to melt into the ground, really. But still.
I just want to reiterate that, like, it's going to be worth waiting 10 years for this secret. I don't want to egg it too much. Maybe I've egged it too much, but in some ways I've not really egged it enough. But yeah, it'll be worth waiting for.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in. Freshly Frosted. That's the kind of game I saw doing really well on like OpenCritic and never. It's like a puzzly donut game.
It's a donut puzzle game. I actually own it because I got a review code for
own
Freshly Frosted. Yeah,
Nice.
I have not played it. It's in the mold of. There was another. So you know, Seren, she does a bunch of those games. Has worked on publishing with a bunch of those games. Like they're very much puzzle games. They're always very similar in that vein. And Freshly Frosted is in that vein. I can't remember the company. I think it begins with a D. I can't remember the name of the publisher.
Right.
Anyway, they do a bunch of puzzle games like that, and Freshly Frosted is like a donut puzzle game basically in that vein. Which I should check it out. I remember Daniel Bloodworth on Easy Allies talking about it as well. So that's a cool pick for sure. Lovely. Our next one comes from Victory Star, who says, Dear NBZ and Bally, first off, congrats for 10 years of running the show. It's always been a pleasure listening to both of you while working. Now for my personal top 3 GOTYTDACOTY list. Number 3, Dokapon Kingdom Connect. I played this game with 2 of my friends online. I'm sure glad it was not local because we would have tried to stab each other over all the horrible things that occurred in the game. If you can find friends that can get together once a week to play, I highly recommend this game. However, be prepared for massive amounts of salt. Number 2, Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. I enjoyed this game a whole lot more than I thought I was going to. It was great naming all my party members as my raid friends from Final Fantasy XIV and trying to get them in their jobs from that game. It was also cool seeing the origin of a lot of the characters and music that future games would reference. Number 1, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro has gone on to be in my top 10 favourite games of all time after finishing it this year. Combat is honestly closer to a rhythm game with how your goal is to deflect attacks thrown your way, to break enemy posture, and kill them with a shinobi death blow. However, I still think this game is fantastic, and were it not for it coming out the same year I got addicted to Final Fantasy XIV, it probably would have been my GOTY for 2019. Thank you for taking the time to read. Hope it wasn't too rambly. Congrats again for 10 years of the show, and here's to another 10 Victory Star. So, Dokapon Kingdom, Bally. We should get on. It's very Mario Party-esque.
All right, yeah.
I think the Runaway guys played it. Chugga Conroy, Nintendo Capri Sun, and Proton John. I think they've played some Dokapon Kingdom before. I have seen some of stuff from that game. It seems pretty stupid and absurd. And yes, I imagine frustrating in a Mario Party type of way. That's a lot of fun.
Our next one is from Wicked Gamer UK Alan. They said, Hi Bally and MBZ. What a year for gaming it's been. It's been a non-stop firehouse of fun with a wide variety of games that have truly made this one of the best years ever in gaming. Also, just to say congrats on 10 years of podcasting. I've enjoyed all the episodes that come out, and like Bally, there have been many a time I've been on a run and then downloaded a game when I got home because of hearing you two discuss it. Here's to 10 more years. Here are my lists for both games that came out this year and games that didn't come out this year. So we'll go for the ones that obviously didn't come out this year.
Yeah.
Number 5, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap. Number 4, Dead Cells. Number 3, Dragon's Dogma. I'm not usually a fan of fantasy role-playing games, but the unique hooks of this game made it feel more interesting. This is a great example of a game that I wouldn't sit down on the sofa to play, and having it on the Switch made jumping in and making progress much easier for my playstyle. Number 2, Cyberpunk 2077. Does this one count? I'm not sure anymore, but man, is this game fun. The atmosphere, the story, the acting are all awesome. Sure, it's not perfect, but I love getting lost in Night City, and the gameplay mechanics are fun to boot. Number 1, Hollow Knight. Wow. Love this game. I can't believe it took me so long to finally play it. What's to say that hasn't already been said? Great controls and mechanics, the right level of challenge and exploration, and the animation is just fantastic. All the elements come together to make this an awesome game. It's not perfect, but it's surely a classic for the ages. And man, oh man, does it look great on the OLED Switch.
Imagine playing Hollow Knight for the first time on the OLED Switch.
God.
That's a dream. It's frankly a dream. Cyberpunk is really had a bit of a year with the whole expansion stuff.
I might have to put it on my long games list.
Yeah,
Cyberpunk,
I guess so. But I bought Cyberpunk the day it came out and then never played it because it just didn't work on my old PC. It was that busted. I've been thinking a lot recently about, well, it's Christmas time. I've got time off. Do I just install Cyberpunk? I kind of want to wait until the DLC is on sale to do it though, because it sounds better to like do it with the DLC at the same time, you know.
But it does also sound like the updates in the main game are really great.
Yes.
It was needed.
Absolutely. And shout out to Dragon's Dogma. I have it on Switch. It was like £4 in a sale recently, so I picked it up. Dragon's Dogma 2 coming out early next year. And people who love Dragon's Dogma, they love Dragon's Dogma. It's like the only thing they talk about. So it's one of those games that I do want to
I definitely
play.
missed that was on Switch.
Yes, it's on Switch. It's a good version as well, apparently. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to checking it out. My colleague, Wow, is maybe the biggest Dragon's Dogma fan I know. Probably the biggest Dragon's Dogma fan vocally on Twitter.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
so yeah, so I need to play at some point just for him alone. Lovely. So, our next one is from Matraya. And Matraya says, with it being such a strong year, even as someone who only owns a Switch, I sadly didn't get to as many older games as I hoped, but I still had some great times with a few. So, number 6, Switch Sports Golf. Number 5, Bayonetta 2. Number 4, FIFA 11 Wii version. Now hear me out. This is the only good FIFA to exist. I played this at a friend's house and it's such a broken mess that it's unintentionally amazing. There are so many absurd glitches that left us in tears. Number 3, Fire Emblem 8 Sacred Stones. It makes it this high thanks to its fun cast and good plot. That said, every map was solved by moving Seth forwards, which really took away from any fun the gameplay may have provided. Number 2, The Gardens Between. I played this a few years back, but was a complete fool with puzzle games and may have googled most of the solutions. I came back with a few easier puzzle games under my belt and found a very engaging and well-designed game. And number 1, VVV. This is a platformer in its most pure form. The level design is absolutely wonderful, the movement is simple, but it has a huge skill ceiling, and the soundtrack is non-stop bangers.
Shout outs to Switch Sports Golf, which we had a good time playing Switch Sports. Was that last year, right? And
I think it was, yes.
Yeah, and I was looking forward to the golf update, and then we just didn't
play it.
Do that, and we probably owe it to ourselves to try that one day. But yeah,
I do. I think, did we do YouTube videos on Wii Sports Club? Was it?
Yes,
I think we did.
And you beat me at golf.
Did I win? Oh my god,
Somehow.
That's great. Yeah,
it's like the only time you've beaten me at Wii Sports Golf, and it was filmed on your YouTube channel. But
of course, that's how the way it goes. But yeah, no, I'd like to go back to that. And number 1 and number 2, two very TNL games, Gardens Between and VVV, which is very, very nice to see.
Games. Very good games.
Stuff. All right.
Our next one is from Tim, who says, it was a great year for new games, but every year is a great year to check out some older games. Here were my top 10 favorites of not 2023. Number 10, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. Number 9, Star Wars Squadrons. Number 8, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Number 7, The Messenger. Number 6, Vampire Survivors. Number 5, Citizen Sleeper. Number 4, Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer, featuring The Legend of Zelda, the longest official title ever. And my top 3. Number 3, Pentiment, a truly unique game. I love getting to know the people of this small town over the generations and unraveling the different mysteries across the 3 acts. Number 2, Disco Elysium. I've a hard time explaining what makes Disco Elysium so special. The dialogue system and writing in this game are just on another level, constantly engaging and hilarious while exploring the character's psyche and driving the entire narrative through its twists and turns. Plus, Kim Kitsuragi is simply one of the best video game companions of all time. Number 1, Persona 5 Royal. I'm cheating a bit here as P5R was my GOTYTDACOTY last year too, but having only played half the game last year and then putting in another 60 hours to finish it this year, it would just be wrong not to put it in this spot again. Memorable characters and villains put this game, the Royal added content in particular, in the top tier of video game narratives.
Excellent. I think about Pentiment constantly. It's a game that is just so fucking good, and yeah, I think more people need to play it. And I feel like it got talked about a lot of the time, but not as many people have talked about it this past year overall. But Disco Elysium, one I need to get to. I have it on Steam Deck, ready to go whenever it's ready and waiting for me.
I hear the Switch port is bad, but I should pick that up on something else. But
I think PS5 or Xbox would be good for that probably.
I want to give shout outs to Star Wars Squadrons. That game does not get enough love, and it was one of the most impressive VR experiences I've ever had. It was so cool, just like piloting different ships from Star Wars, and doing that in VR was insane, even on PS4. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our next list is from McBoss. Hi guys, long-time friend of the show. Here is my list of top 10 games I beat this year that didn't come out this year. Congrats on 10 years and being the top of my podcast list on Spotify. Hey, there you go. At number 10, Super Mario Kart. Number 9, Sin and Punishment, Successor of the Skies. Number 8, Bug Fables. Number 6, Box Boy. Number 7, Box Boy. I don't know why, for some reason, my brain thought that number 8 to number 7 was wrong, and I should say 6 instead. Let's go through that again. So number 8 was Bug Fables, number 7, Box Boy, number 6, Splatoon 3, number 5, Wario Land: The Shake Dimension, number 4, Live Alive, and let's get into the top 3. Number 3, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. A great transition into 3D for Kirby. Really enjoyed enhancing the power-ups and doing the little challenge levels. Spectacular game, and I'm a big fan of Kirby games, so I'm just really glad they nailed it with this one. Number 2, SMT5. Funny story with this game is that it was a complete surprise from my girlfriend last Christmas. She was looking for games I might like, watched the trailer, and decided on this. So glad she got me it because I wouldn't have picked it up for myself, and I really vibed with it. Loved how batshit JRPG-y this game is, and all of the mythology, legend, religious aspect of the monsters, but the whole experience is what really pushes this up the list. Number 1, Wario Land 3. What an amazing game. It's Metroidvania-esque before I even knew what they were and how much I loved them. It's got me thinking, is this why I love Metroidvanias? There's a great feeling as you get the upgrades and unlockable levels, the feeling of progression as Wario breaks through harder and harder blocks. Wario's character is so much fun. I've beat this game before, but this is my first time getting 100%, so it counts as my GOTYTDACOTY. Is it a nostalgia pick? Hell yeah. Is it purely nostalgia? No way. This game is awesome and holds up incredibly well. Thanks, guys. All the best, McBoss. So yeah, some cool picks in there for sure. I need to play the Sin and Punishment games, both the original, which I've had on Wii U, and it's now on the N64 thing on Switch, as well as the sequel, which I think is also on Wii U. Which did I download that before the Wii U disappeared? Fuck. I'm not sure if I did. I need to go and check, but I would like to play the successor as well.
Our next list is from Manbear, who says, in the few years I've put a list like this together, this GOTYTDACOTY list was the toughest for me to order. A lot of great games, but anything between my number 3 and 13 felt like it could be swapped around depending on the day. Here's my list as it stands today. Honorable mentions: Metal Hellsinger, WarioWare Inc., and Titanfall 2. Number 10, Chained Echoes. Number 9, Forza Horizon 5. Number 8, Donkey Kong 94. Number 7, Pokemon Trading Card Game. Number 6, Spider-Man. Number 5, Metroid Fusion. Number 4, Return of the Obra Dinn. This is the most unique game I've played in a long time. The large overarching puzzle is put together in such a clever way that I couldn't stop thinking about it for most of the week I spent playing. Number 3, Horizon Forbidden West. A great sequel to the first game. The map icons can be a bit overbearing, and I definitely had some issues with bugs and janky platforming. But once you get past all that, there's a beautiful game with a really interesting story and fun combat that allows you to approach it in many different ways. Number 2, Melatonin, a very polished rhythm game filled with fun minigames that had great music to go along with them. Clearly inspired by Rhythm Heaven, would love to find more games like this one. Number 1, Citizen Sleeper. This was a no-brainer at number 1. What a special narrative experience that's impossible to replicate outside of gaming. It was an emotional journey that I had trouble putting down. I don't think there's much to be said that hasn't already been said on this podcast, so I'll leave it at that.
Great stuff.
Great game.
Very
Citizen
good picks
Sleeper.
there. Yeah, I mean, Citizen Sleeper is, again, another game I still think about. Last year was very, very good for that stuff, right? With those types of narrative games, I think it was extremely strong. So, yeah, glad to see all the love that's getting. And, you know, it's good to see that even in this year, people still believe Metroid Fusion an excellent video game that's worth putting on a list. I'm glad to see this, not just my nostalgia making me always shout about Metroid Fusion, and that people still like it today, which is good. I really want to play Melatonin. There's this kind of indie, rise up of Rhythm Heaven likes starting to appear, because Nintendo refuses to make them, and so Melatonin came out. The one that I'm looking forward to is called Bits and Bops. That's the one that feels like the most Rhythm Heaven like, so I'm hoping that comes out next year and is good, so we'll see. Alrighty, so next up is Jackpot with a very short list. He says, not enough time to write descriptions, but here's my top 5. At number 5, For the King. Number 4, Tinykin. Number 3, Florence. Number 2, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and number 1, Eastward. I mean, yeah, those are some strong
That's a great top 2.
TNL picks there for sure. Yeah, Ori and Eastward in the same year. I mean, is there better gaming like time spent than those games in the same year? It's pretty fucking great stuff.
I feel like the counter to Ori with Eastward would be what would it be? Hades with Metroid Dread. Those were like the top 2 battles of each year. So
exactly. Yeah,
that's your next year, perhaps.
Absolutely.
Our next list is from Flapjackal. Again, says, unfortunately, I'm at work on a Saturday, so I can't be descriptive, but here are my top 5 GOTYTDACOTYs. Number 5, Ocean Heart, a neat little Zelda-like game I've had in my backlog for a while. Number 4, Death's Door. I kind of wish I would have played this last year before Tunic, as it just felt like Tunic Light without the big secret twist. Number 3, Citizen Sleeper. I haven't played a narrative-focused game in a long time, but I really enjoyed the depth they put in the characters. Number 2, Dark Souls 2, my first of the Dark Souls trilogy, and honestly, I think I like it a bit more than Dark Souls 1, and I'm only putting one of them in here. And then number 1, The Messenger. Really happy I both came back to this and played it before Sea of Stars.
Great stuff. Good to see. It feels like Citizen Sleeper is getting a lot of love in these lists, which is excellent.
Yeah, it's good.
But yeah, I think that I wouldn't say The Messenger is required playing for Sea of Stars, because honestly, I forgot all the story in The Messenger. I don't think I actually read any of the story in The Messenger, so I'd have no idea how it connects.
I'm going to get to Sea of Stars starting next year.
Yeah, but I do think that the impact of the music, if you have not played The Messenger, and you will not feel the impact of the music stuff that happens in Sea of Stars, so I'd recommend playing it for just that alone. Yeah, definitely.
I've not thought about Ocean Heart in a very long time. I remember when that was first showed off and everyone was like, oh, it's Wind Waker, nice.
Yeah, I actually looked this up. This isn't the game you're thinking of, Bally.
Is it
this
not?
is actually,
am I thinking of Ocean Horn?
You're always thinking of Ocean Horn, exactly. That's what
Easy
you're
mistake
thinking
to
of.
make.
But this is another. We were talking about Anodyne earlier. This is very much that as well. Ocean's Heart is like another Minish Cap top-down kind of Zelda-like game, which is very cool. Lovely. And here is our last list of the day, Bally. It's from Capsule J, who says, "Hey gents, I'm hopefully sneaking this one in just in time. Overall, this was a very Metroidvania-focused GOTYTDACOTY." Capsule J is correct, because I think he got this in about half an hour before we recorded, so really the nick of time. So number 5, The Mummy Demastered, a surprisingly good game based on a surprisingly terrible film. Number 4, Giraffe and Annika. This 3D platformer with rhythm-based battles certainly made an impression. Number 3, Jedi Fallen Order. This is easily my favorite Star Wars game that doesn't involve piloting vehicles. Number 2, Curse Crackers. If you have nostalgia for the Game Boy Color, this is a must-play platformer. Number 1, Infernax. Someone made a version of Castlevania 2 that's actually good. It's a miracle. Thanks for another great year of podcasting, Capsule J. Yeah, definitely a good list there. In terms, I saw Giant Bomb playing Curse Crackers. There was a quick look for that game. Looks very cool. Kind of classic Game Boy throwback platformer. And I always love it. Capsule J always has a game in here I've never heard of. I think I might have heard of Giraffe and Annika before, but I don't have any idea what it looks like or what it's about. So
trying to get a game past MBZ he's never heard of is a skill in and of itself. So really well done, Capsule J.
He always manages it every year. Yeah. There's always one. So shout out to Capsule J for always digging deep into the indies to find some cool stuff. Lovely. Well, thanks everybody for sending all those lists in, and also thanks everybody for saying nice things about our 10 years stuff. That was very much appreciated, because every time I read one of these emails, I was like, oh yeah, someone's saying they've listened for a long time, and very, very nice to hear. So appreciate all that. But Bally, all these lists, they're all well and good, but they don't compare to the shit that's going down right now. So after the break, come back where we will go through our own lists for GOTYTDACOTY. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. It's the second half of this episode, and that means it's the GOTYTDACOTY for 2023. And myself and Bally, we have lists to go through. Now, usually, it's a top 10 list that we go through, each of us. I looked at Bally's games he's played this year, and I counted them. And I was like, he can, if at a push, like 7 is the maximum he can do from this list. And I said to Bally, I messaged Bally over text, I'm like, so what if we do this thing where like we go back and forth, but for the first few you do games that you didn't get to play this year that you think might have made your list or might make your list next year. And you're like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then today Bally's like, I've got enough for a list. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Bally? What are you talking? I can see your list. You don't.
I've not gone away and beaten 3 games.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you can't have just secretly done some game beating. So anyway, Bally has a list of 10 games. I don't know what it's going to be like because from my count he can't get to 10. But I'm very interested to hear and see. So we're going to go into this and see what it's like. But yes, I think Bally, for you, this has been a unusual year in terms of you played lots of very long games. I mean, the aforementioned Octopath Traveler, which you spent like 88 hours or 90 hours playing for the first half of this year. Yeah,
and I think it like this, as much as it was one of the best years in video games in terms of releases and all these things, they were like, is it the best year since 1998? It's like, well, categorically it is the best best year for Bally, because like 1 million Bally games came out this year, and I'm mentioning a couple of them in this list, but I'm going to mention more of them in obviously the game of the year list next time. But like, I was very preoccupied with new releases constantly, and that has meant that my game of the year that didn't actually come out this year list is very, very limited in comparison. So this is unfortunately the weakest list I've ever done, but I still have 10 games to talk about. I do like most of these games quite a bit.
Most of them, okay.
Cool. Not all of them.
But,
we'll get to it. So yeah, there's still some quality games I played this year that didn't actually come out this year.
Great, good stuff. Well, let's kick it off. Bally, do you want to go first? Should I go first?
I'll go first. So this is my first one. So this is a game that qualifies because I beat it this year, but it came out last year. And that game is Sports Story.
Oh my god. The fact that Sports Story even makes a top 10 makes my skin crawl
it's
somewhat.
Not good.
But
it's not good.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy Sports Story. There are aspects of it I did enjoy. Like the first game, like the golf is the strongest aspect. For me, this game fell apart where it became cricket and it became tennis and it became these other things, and those aspects weren't fully fleshed out. I kind of enjoyed a decent chunk of the tennis, but then after that, the game just fell off like a cliff in terms of content and things that you were doing, and the kind of charming nature of Golf Story, where you're moving from area to area, doing a combination of playing courses and then doing kind of like puzzly RPG style interactions with people. That balance was just completely off with this game, and it's a real shame because I think this game definitely had a lot of promise, but the end feels really rushed. Mechanically, it just feels flawed. It doesn't feel like a very finished game in large parts, and yes, there's some fun golf in there, but nowhere near enough to bring this game like anywhere higher up this list. And it's lucky, as MBZ said, it is lucky to be on this list. It is done well because I have not played enough other games. So yeah, number 10, Sports Story.
Yeah, by default, just kind of lands there at the bottom.
You could just make it a top 9. It doesn't have to be.
You could do. You could.
You're going to put this onto a form later, MBZ, and it'll drive me mad if there weren't 10 games. Anyway, but
well, I think it will still drive me mad because I have a suspicion about something, but we'll see.
Okay.
Anyway. I definitely agree. I mean, I didn't even finish Sports Story. Again, I think it was a game we were both super excited for, given how good Golf Story was. And yeah, I remember, I think I was like 15 hours into it, and I got to a point and I was looking up a YouTube video of when it ended, and it was like even more than I expected, and I just threw in the towel. And so, I mean, kudos to you, Bally, for soldiering on and finishing the damn thing.
I had to. There was no choice. It was going to be the thing that I beat no matter what.
Yeah. Well, you fought the good fight. I'm not sure many people are in your shoes, having experienced all of Sports Story. So there you go. All right, my number 10. So I don't think I've ever talked about my number 10 on any of our shows this whole year, but it is a game that I returned to constantly throughout the entire year, and it's a little game called The Ramp. So I bought this, I think, in the Steam sale at the end of 2022, and it was a thing I'd always been a little bit interested in. It's basically a little skateboarding vignette game where you have these 4 stages. It's kind of an isometric view, so you have these 4 stages and you're the skateboarder, and the first one is literally just one ramp, and it's a kind of limited thing in this kind of space where you're just this guy going back and forth on this ramp, and it's very much a game about pure mechanics and feel, where there's no scoring, there's no timer, there's no nothing. If you fall, you'll just respawn and start again. It's a game almost without any goals, and really, it's been just a very nice thing to have this year, as a year that's been very exhausting, and just I've been very busy work-wise and all that sort of stuff. Oftentimes, I get into bed and I'm like, I want to play something, but I only want to play it for like 7 minutes, right? It's like midnight, and I can't justify putting half an hour into something because I need to get to sleep. So I pick up my Steam Deck. This is the perfect Steam Deck game. Pick up my Steam Deck, boot up the ramp, and play it for like 5 to 7 minutes. And I think I've put 4 or 5 hours into it over the course of the year, and that is literally 5 minutes at a time, basically every night going to it and picking it up.
What are you doing in it?
I'm just basically flowing with it, right? I'm just, I'm learning so the way the mechanic works is that if you hold the A button when you're going down the ramp, you'll pick up momentum, and you let go of it when you are on flat ground. So this is this weird, it took me a while to get my head around, where you hold it as you go down, let go of it, then hold it again as you go back up the ramp, and there is a real mechanical satisfaction to just getting into the flow and nailing it. You use the 2 sticks to do tricks in the air, so the idea is just going back and forth doing tricks, and you get achievements for doing like 720s or like spins that are even more than that, even more rotations. And so the 4 stages, there are 4 distinct stages. One is a ramp, one is a swimming pool, which is probably my favorite. It's the one where I felt I got in the best flow state. You can also grind on the edge, so you can like string these things together where you're just, doing a thing, going up, spinning in the air, landing on a grinding around the corner. And the swimming pool has this very specific ladder, and I got very used to this ladder because that's often where I would end up failing, is like hitting that ladder by accident and it kind of knocking me to the ground. The 3rd stage is the one I played the least, which is it's kind of a skate park style divot area, but there's a door, and so you can accidentally kind of run into some of the edges going into the secondary parts of it. And the last one is just a massive ramp where you just go all the way down the ramp and then you jump to land on a giant kind of thing. It's like I don't know if you ever saw like the Tony Hawk, like Tony Hawk's backyard. He has this giant ramp thing, and there's this skateboarder. I remember back like the Olympics a couple of years ago. She's like 11 years old or something, and she's already like insanely good at skateboarding. And there's this video that went viral a couple of years ago of her going down this ramp doing Tony Hawk's mega jump off the ramp. You basically go through the air and then land on the other side, and that's basically what this last level is, which is just this massive ramp. And so the idea is just like getting there, and then my goal the whole time has been like get all the way up and can I do what's the most amount of spins I can do, and then perfectly landing it back. And it's just a really, again, I think this is the purest kind of video game that exists, where there's literally no goals whatsoever. It's just mechanical mastery. It's just something for my fingers to do as I kind of drift off, listen to a podcast, just lock in and just feel good moving stuff around. Again, very NBZ type game. It's all about movement and feel. But yeah, it's been my consistent companion this entire year. And yeah, it's super cheap, often goes on sale. And yeah, again, there's not much to it, but that's kind of the joy of it, is that it's just this very simple, almost toy-like thing. So that is The Ramp, and I've really enjoyed that this year. So that's my number 10. Bally, over to you for number 9.
My number 9 is Inmost. This was a short 3 to 4 hours-ish kind of game where you're playing as 3 different characters at 3 different times, unraveling, telling this very dark story about... kind of hard to describe now, to be honest, but it's kind of about the story is about like how the 3 characters are linked to each other, kind of like in a metaphorical way.
Right.
I don't want to spoil it, but like it's an incredibly dark game. It's kind of like a 2D puzzle platformer, although one of the characters is a lot more action focused, and there's a whole lot of like kind of creepy enemies that chase you and dark stuff about this game. And like I said at the time when I played, I had to look up like some narrative explainers once I'd beaten the game to like fully understand what did I just see. And I was like, oh wow, that was actually way darker than I'd even realized in the moment. And yeah, I think that the messages and the themes of the game are really impressive, and the way it handles all those themes. I do think that some of the mechanics can just get a little bit clunky in part, and visually it's a stunning game. It's like this really unique pixel art. It's very like black and white and loads of shades of gray kind of like look to it, but it's just not the most slick type of game. When you're doing puzzle platforming, you want it to feel good and to make sense and to progress things forward. And while the narrative is very enticing and interesting, I didn't find that mechanically the game was quite as smooth as I had wanted it to be. But I'd still really recommend this game. I really did enjoy this game, and I do think that it's worth playing. I think that it's tackling themes that are like way darker than the pixel art would suggest it would be, and I did give it great credit for that. I think it does stick its landing pretty well. I just think that it's got some mechanical issues, but yeah, in most, I definitely recommend trying it out.
Yeah, I definitely want to get around to this. I think I have it for free on PC somewhere through some store or another. Yeah, you played it on Switch, right? It went on sale.
I played it on Switch, yeah. I think it came out, was it last year or the year before?
A couple of years, yeah. I think we were interested because it was a Chucklefish published game, right?
Chucklefish published, and you think of Chucklefish like, hey, they make nice games, and like Wargroove and all
Happy
these other nice
Clappy,
games.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not one of those.
It's the opposite,
even though
yeah.
the pixel art kind of, you could argue, is in that category. It's got great pixel art, but
yeah, I guess Eastwood has some dark stuff going on in that game as well.
It does get dark. Yeah. I'd say this game gets 10 times darker than that.
Oh, wow, okay.
But yeah, it's cool. I think it is really cool. It does unique storytelling to video games, I will say. Like, I do think it presents some narratives in a really interesting way, for sure.
Very nice. And yeah, it still has a pretty lovely pixel art style. So,
it's great.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Excellent. All right. My number 9. So my number 9 is me finally putting a game to rest, which is the Mega Man Legacy Collection, because I finished it this year by closing out Mega Man 6. So my number 9 is Mega Man 6. Yeah, I think, honestly, this is my second favorite now behind Mega Man 2.
Wow.
It feels like they got to that point in the series where they figured out how it feels to be Mega Man, right? Over the course of 1 through 6, he's learned to charge his beam, he's learned to slide, he's learned to, instead of relying on a dog for everything, now he just turned that dog into a backpack that he can just put out anywhere, and he doesn't need the dog anymore. Mega Man has just learned a lot as he's gone on, and I think this game is cool in a few ways. Like, there's the ways in which you can have these alternate exits that give you Beat as a companion, as an extra kind of bonus weapon, so you can kind of finish the levels in a couple of different ways, almost precursoring what would happen in Mega Man X. But all the levels, they either have a really strong level and design that's memorable, or they have a really strong boss that's nice and memorable. So I tended to find the levels were really good that had like a little bit weaker bosses, and the vice versa for the other way around as well. So yeah, and I think the other nice thing about it is that it does kind of a 2 castle stage thing. So instead of being like, fight another 8 levels of Robot Masters like Mega Man 3 does, which is my least favorite thing, it does the 8 masters, then you go into a whole castle section, do a bunch of levels, and then you do another castle section, do a bunch of levels. And I just really think the format works super nicely. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Great little game, very good pacing to it, and just, yeah, they'd figured out Mega Man by this point, and some of the ideas maybe running a little bit dry in terms of power-ups and weapons, but overall really good fun, and just reminds me why I just find Mega Man the best. He's the NES man for me. He's the guy who represents the NES and the good things about the NES in the best way. And yeah, still my favorite series on that console above any of Nintendo's stuff is Mega Man. So
is Mega Man the lead singer of the Beatles?
I think Mega Man is the lead singer. I think who's the lead singer of the Beatles? Everyone's going to crucify me.
Is it Paul McCartney?
Yeah, maybe Paul McCartney. I think so.
They did dueling lead vocals.
It's John Lennon and Paul McCartney, right? Is the two of them who are like the kind of front guys?
Yeah, I think they were both alternated songs, but I'm sure there are Beatles listeners who are about to murder me right now. But if they've not murdered me already, and they're still listening, then well done. But
yeah, all I'm saying is that Mega Man is either Paul McCartney or John Lennon, and the other one is Simon Belmont, because those are the two. It's Castlevania and Mega Man for NES for me. So it's really those guys, the front men. I guess Ringo Starr is Mario, probably just left in the corner. And,
okay.
For us anyway, we don't care about him, so he's just left in the corner. But anyway, let's not belabor the metaphor any longer. Bally, what's your number 8 game of the year that didn't come out this year?
My number 8 is actually a game I beat last year, but I beat it after we had recorded our GOTYTDACOTY list.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that game is Pilot Wings 64.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, see, I'm making up the numbers, MBZ.
No, see, this is legit, though, because I always do this, because I always look back at what were the things that I played that didn't come out that year after we record this episode, because there's still another month of the year to go, so, there's still stuff that gets played in that time period, so this is not cheating at all. This is very legit. I agree with this. Yeah.
So yeah, I did really enjoy this game. It's nowhere near as janky as you might think when you're like, right, I think it came out launch or launch period for the N64, so like it's an old game, and obviously I played it on Switch Online, and it looks pretty crisp on Switch Online, which is great. And I was in love with Pilot Wings Resort on launch on the 3DS. Now this game's nowhere near those echelons of like joy and smoothness, and you're not playing with the 3DS 3D and all these things, but it still has some really cool like level design and short, sharp missions, which is why I love this game. It's like, here's this really like short, sharp, precise thing you have to do, and you have to nail it. And then if you fail, well, do it again. And so it's like that, the game forcing you to do a small thing in a short amount of time and nailing it. I don't think there's enough games that generally do that. Like, I think it's a cool game that is doing that with like 3 different types of plane, where you got what have you got? You got the glider, you've got the like jetpack, and then you've got the pseudo plane. It's like, it's not a pedal plane, but it's like maybe it is a pedal plane. It is a slightly different plane to the Wii Sports Resort game, but having the different vehicles and doing those tasks, and just some really weird zany islands, and the characters look. I wouldn't say this game looks like a Nintendo game. If you step back at like the art style and the design of characters, it looks truly bizarre. And maybe that's to do with like the polygons on the N64, and maybe that wasn't how the original artists had envisaged those characters, but they look really funky and really bizarre and really strange, in a really charming kind of way, actually. So I think that it's a really unusual kind of game, and I had a really good time. I didn't completely nail every single mission like I did with Resort, but that's fine. Like, I still had a great time. I think I got like a silver in every mission or something. So like, I still had a really good time doing those missions, getting good medals, and beating the game. And it didn't take too long. I think it's like a 5, 6, maybe 7 hour game. And I'd highly recommend checking it out on Nintendo Switch Online if people have that subscription. It's a really, really cool game that's worth playing. And I've really enjoyed playing N64 games generally.
Yeah, no, you have. I checked the other day and I saw you have like 20 hours in the N64 app. So
yeah, solid,
definitely gone deep on that stuff, which is very cool. I really, there's a few things on there that I really want to play. Banjo-Kazooie is on there, and I really want to get to that. That's on my list for sure. I'd love to play through that game. But yeah, do you think, Bally, if you had played this on the N64 back in the day, it would have changed anything about, your game taste, or would have, because I feel like you were primed to play this even back then as someone who liked racing games.
Yeah, I feel like I would have 100% gravitated towards this, and definitely Rogue Squadron, like on N64. And obviously I owned Battle for Naboo, and God, I need to go back and play that game, because the whole like flying thing on N64, I really did enjoy. And maybe this game would have made me want to try more flyers, as it were, or like things that aren't just Star Wars shooting flyers, like more kind of tactical kind of landing and this kind of thing. Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, would this have led you in a direction to like buying Microsoft Flight Simulator on PC in like the late 90s and going deep on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a style that I enjoy. I wouldn't say it's like anywhere near the top echelon of games, although I do really rate Resort incredibly
You do
highly,
strike me as someone who could get into Microsoft Flight
could.
Simulator.
I definitely could. I don't think necessarily this is the game to do it, but it's still a really good time. It's a really good game. Definitely check it out.
Great stuff. Very glad to hear it. My number 8 is Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. So number 3 in terms of my Final Fantasy XIV, well, the second expansion, but the third storyline in Final Fantasy XIV. This was, it's very similar to you with Pilot Wing. This was half of my December last year. So like probably 2 weeks solid. I put maybe 40 to 50 hours more into Final Fantasy XIV with Stormblood. And I really like Stormblood. I think a lot of people talk about it as kind of the down period of the kind of expansions where everyone loves Heavensward, and then they say, oh, it dips down for Stormblood, but then it gets really good at Shadowbringers, right? And I enjoyed Heavensward, but I didn't really get the hype behind it. I think up to this point, again, this is a game I put 170 hours into, and I still don't really get the hype behind it, if I'm fully honest.
Wow.
I really enjoy it because I like MMOs, and there's something so chill about Final Fantasy XIV. You just, like, I really enjoyed over that Christmas period as well. They gave away like a free mount, like a reindeer mount, and when he goes in the sky, he does this little animation where he like bursts presents out of himself. It's one of those kind of things, right, where MMOs inspire this not greed, but like you see someone has something and you're like, how do I get that? And then you go up online into a wiki that has like 7,000 items in it, and it's like, this was only obtainable in 2016 at the Christmas event, and I'm like, oh man, I'm never gonna get that, but now I have one of those things, and someone in 3 years will be looking up and they're like, how does that guy have that reindeer? And they'll look up online and they'll be like, so it's only obtainable over from December 3rd to December 14th of 2022 or whatever, and I'm the guy who has it. So it's one of those types of things, right, where you can get those fun little presents and those little rewards, and that becomes like a part of your character of that's the thing that I'll have for the rest of this game and identify with. But I really like Stormblood because it starts to introduce a more Japanese-inspired setting. So Final Fantasy XIV takes place on like this entire world, right? This world map. There's like the kind of main continent that you start at, and then there's other places. And over the sea, there's this place where it's much more Japanese-inspired. There's a city called Kugane, which is like this port town, this kind of harbor Japanese port town, and it's beautiful. The music there is wonderful. There's this kind of really big open expanse, like this big wild open expanse place that I really enjoyed exploring. There's kind of like samurai inspired classes and stuff like that. The characters all have that kind of inspiration behind them, and I really like how that story works, and it kind of takes one of the main characters who you've known for a while and just changes things, and you find out a bit more about them. And I think it just overall has this great synthesis of setting, music, alongside a bit of a political story going on, and I think I ended up liking it more than Heavensward, which surprises me. I think probably surprises other people more, because I think other people are more up on that story. I think it was a bit more hyped, I think, is the problem. Like people are like, oh, Heavensward, it's such a good stuff, and I'm like, it's fine. Like all this narrative stuff is totally fine so far, and I haven't felt that thing that has really knocked me off my feet. And maybe this is the thing, right? Because having played Final Fantasy 16 this year, there's a lot of people out there who are like, well, 16 is made by the 14 people, right? And so like the writing is kind of very similar to that in a way. And I feel like my disappointment with Final Fantasy 16 story maybe speaks to where I'm at with 14 as well, where I'm like, maybe I'm just not the right audience for this kind of storytelling. I like it. I think it's good, but I don't think it's like, people talk about crying with this stuff, and like, I don't know, it's very interesting to me because I find that it doesn't affect me in that same way. But I have heard that Shadowbringers is like the next coming of Christ. So that's the next expansion.
That's what you're going for.
That's the next expansion, and hopefully I'll have some time over this Christmas to dig into that and get through Shadowbringers, because that's where it sounds like everything really does come together. And there's multiple people in Discords I've been in who have also said the same thing as me, is they didn't really get it, and then Shadowbringers happened, and that's when they really just converted. So once again, I hope that next year I come back to you all and my number one game of the year is Shadowbringers, but we'll have to wait and see if that is the case. But Stormblood, still really enjoy Stormblood. So any chance I have, like I said, Bally, on our previous episode, if the podcast didn't exist, I would just go and just start playing Final Fantasy 14. So yeah, that's what I'll do.
Right, I think we're on 7. So my number 7 is a game beat quite recently, which is Solar Ash.
Yeah.
I think we were maybe quite harsh jointly on Solar Ash.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
I think the highs of this game are impeccable. I think like the idea of Shadow of the Colossus style bosses that you are essentially speed running on in like this glidey, floaty, platforming kind of way is really fun. It was just a lot of the stuff in between that I found. Found a bit boring because I feel like the game is at its best when it's doing those short, sharp challenges, and the Shadow of the Colossus comparison is kind of apt in a way because I think that's quite a lean game for what it's going for. It's because it's an open world game, but mainly the only things to do in Shadow of the Colossus are fight bosses, whereas in Solar Ash, you're not just fighting bosses, you're doing quite a lot of other area collecting, and it's maybe that kind of navigating those to get to those other areas and then sometimes executing on the kind of collecting that you need to do in those other areas that kind of set up the boss fight that I found. Some of them are great. Some of them were really rough and like didn't feel smooth and fun to engage with in a platforming sense, which is where, like I said, the game is at its strongest. So like if this game had just been boss fights, I think it might be even higher up this list, but because there's all that kind of navigating and doing the other stuff in between, and there's even like enemy on enemy combat, like I think that just felt a bit unnecessary. Like I think the art style is cool, but like mechanically I just wanted this game to be a little leaner, I think. But the good stuff that's there, I absolutely loved it. I think some of the boss fights are really, really impressive and really are executed well.
Yeah, it's definitely fun when you string all of it together and it all flows and you are just barely making it,
really
you know?
nice.
That stuff feels super satisfying. I will say one of my frustrations with this game was the whole health system, whereby once you beat a boss, you arrive at that ethereal place with that giant ghost holding you in their hand, and they just crush you and you lose a health bar.
Yeah.
And then to get it back, you have to collect even
Pay lots
more
of
of
money.
the purple things that you just collect. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Gravity Rush, that game where you... when you're exploring that open world, there's always these little shards around the place, but they spawn infinitely, and so it becomes this sense of, well, they're going to be everywhere, they're not going to go away, so I lose that satisfaction of clearing everything up. Like, one of the things I loved about the Infamous series was in Infamous, you'd find these blast shards, and blast shards would be the thing that upgrade your power, and there's a limited number in the city, and they disappear once you collect them, so it's a kind of a cleanup affair, whereas in this game and in Gravity Rush, you collect those little shards and then they'll just respawn again. So I think Gravity Rush 2 had this problem where I kept going under buildings and being like, I'm satisfied, I collected them all, and I'd come back there later and they'd be there again. I'm like, why did I do that? It feels like not pointless, but it feels like I wasted my time clearing this stuff up and now it's back again. And I almost felt that way with Solar Ash, where I know I needed this currency, but like you only get like one of those things for every one you collect, and you eventually need like 1,000, I think, for each upgrade. So
and your health's pretty important because like you don't want to redo when like sections of the game. Like it's not that much fun when you die and you have to start over from now. I need to go through these checkpoints again. Kind of, like it's I agree, it's not a good aspect of the game.
Yeah, but yeah, that fluidity can be really nice, and just like there's something to the fluffiness of those clouds, right? The marshmallowy kind of bounciness to them.
It's a real style, and yeah, the actual feeling of the running around is very good. It's nice.
Yeah. How would it rank in terms of best running around for this year, Bally? Would it be high on that list?
Well, we have to
running
define
around?
what running around is first, which I think Giant Bomb struggled with.
Exactly.
But,
Take a tip from Giant Bomb. And
if we're counting running around defined as moving around, I think there were games where the moving around was even stronger than Solar Ash this year.
Definitely. But it was good. It was good moving around, running around, as we like to say.
Both.
As always. Number 7 for me, it wouldn't be a list from me unless there was something Yakuza themed in here. And number 7 is the DLC for Lost Judgment, the Kaito Files. So this is a it's like a 6 to 8 hour DLC, which is a nice little chunk of Yakuza in the middle of the year. Or sorry, Like a Dragon. It's very difficult for me to change between that and Like a Dragon because the older games are all called Yakuza. So if I'm talking like Yakuza 0, I'm not going to say Like a Dragon 0 because it's actually called Yakuza 0. But now the series is called Like a Dragon, even though this is Lost Judgment, and it's a mess. It's a mess. I don't know why Sega decided to make this name change, but in any case, we have to live with it now, and that's what the thing is. But I enjoyed Lost Judgment. It's probably on the lower end of my rankings in terms of this series, just because I think the main story, it deals with some topics and doesn't handle them very well. It deals with serious topics and does not handle them deftly, and does some questionable things, I would say, that I wasn't a huge fan of. So Lost Judgment is a little bit lower in my mind, just because the original Judgment I thought had such a strong story, such a great intrigue from like a grand political scale, like a whole health scandal. Like it really gets into stuff that you don't see video games doing a lot. And Lost Judgment didn't quite do that. But this small little slice based on Kaito. So Yagami, he's the main detective in Judgment, and he has his assistant Kaito. Kaito was part of the Yakuza and is like kind of formally of them now, but both him and Yagami kind of grew up at the same time together. They're kind of brothers essentially, but they're not really. And so this follows him as the main character, and he is a bit more of a bruiser type. He's a bit more kind of like Kiryu-esque, so his fighting style is a bit more gruff, a little bit more brawlery, as opposed to the kind of quick style, detective style that Yagami has. And I was worried about that because I've never enjoyed that combat as much. But I think what Kaito Files gets right is that it's a very personal story to this character. It deals with stuff from his past, and it instantly got me hooked with its story premise and what was going on, and a bit of mystery in there. And it continued to just nail it. And I think this trend of like with Like a Dragon Gaiden coming out, The Man Who Raised His Name, like this shorter style of game in this series, I think is really nice, because these games can be very long. They can be extremely long. And I think they're talking about Infinite Wealth being like over 100 hours or something stupid. And that's great. And I do like when they have all these mini games and all that fun stuff in it. But there's something to be said for a just tight experience where it has a strong story. It has some great twists in it. It has some great moments. I mean, this series is filled with great cinematography and acting and just emotional melodrama. And, you know, this is no different. It's one of the best out there. And for a DLC, I think it's stronger than the main game. And I think I enjoyed it a lot more than it. So it actually is quite high in my rankings at this point of the series. And very glad that I finally got around to playing it. I was kind of waiting on a sale, but on PS5, like, DLC rarely goes on sale. So it's one of those things that as soon as I saw it, I was like, I should pick that up. And yeah, it was great. It was a real great injection of some more of this. And yeah, I find that, again, I never get sick of this series. No matter how many I play, I'm always there for it and always having a good time.
And the original game was the reason you bought a PS5.
It was, yeah, exactly. And I was kind of a little bit let down by Lost Judgment.
Annoyed about it.
Yeah, I'm glad I have a PS5 now, because I'll eventually be able to play Persona 6 when it comes out, and obviously Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is only going to be on PS5, right? So
yeah,
there's definitely it's mainly the Japanese, as I said in the past, like, sure, God of War's cool, Horizon's cool, but it's the Japanese games is why I really have a PS5.
Astro and Final Fantasy.
Astro, Final Fantasy, Yakuza, all those, Persona, that's the
Gran
real
Turismo
reason.
7.
Of course, yeah, everyone's favourite Japanese game,
Yeah, you'd
Gran
love
Turismo
that game.
7.
Yeah.
I've heard really good things about that in VR, though, apparently.
Oh, I
Apparently
know.
it's great.
My God.
So.
I need to try that game, even not in VR, but yeah. One day I'll get a VR
One
too,
day.
even if that thing is going to become so like rare. And
It'll probably, it'll probably go on sale, I imagine, relatively soon, because it's probably tanking quite badly. So
yeah,
you'll pick it up on the cheap eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 7, Lost Judgment, The Kaito Files. Bally, over to you.
My number 6. My number 6 is Mario Kart 8.
Okay, all right. I see it.
So it didn't come out this year, but obviously a bunch of DLC did.
Yes.
And I want to say that every time the DLC came out and we'd go online and we'd play through the DLC, and sometimes we'd involve some TNL listeners and hop on Discord, I just had a really great time every time.
Yeah.
And some of these new tracks, I want to shout out, like Yoshi's Island is just amazing. I think the first couple of batches of tracks were cool in that, but part of our thinking was like, yeah, but they just don't have like the gloss of, the original tracks from Mario Kart 8 when it came out way back in 2014, right? And I think that by the end of the DLC, some tracks, especially stuff like Yoshi's Island, definitely did have that gloss and felt like that extra effort had been put in. And there's not much more that can be said about Mario Kart, and I'm really excited to see like what the next step is. And I'd bet my house on, like Mario Kart coming out launch window for Switch 2 probably next year. So I really want to see what happens there. But Mario Kart 8 is still an awesome game. And yes, I've played this game before, but I played it a lot this year, and I think it needs a shout out. So yeah, Mario Kart 8, number 6.
Yeah, it's the game that never dies.
It never dies.
Even here on this podcast, on this list, it never goes away. I think Mario Kart 8 has been a long journey of me coming to terms with the fact that it is better than Mario Kart 7. And it hurts me to say that. It really does. I think, ultimately it's probably not true in my heart, but I think in my mind it has to be true.
You can't even play Mario Kart 7 anymore, right?
Well, you can play it online.
You can play it online.
You can't buy it anymore unless you buy it secondhand, but you can still. They haven't shut down online services yet for Wii U and 3DS yet, which I think, if they haven't announced that already, it's probably coming next year, I would imagine. And that will go away, and then
it'll happen the day the Switch 2 comes out. Bury the lead.
Would not be surprised if that was what happened, but it's definitely a game that has continued to live, and I feel like I don't think it would have dropped off the charts, but it feels like it has given it this added momentum at the back half of its life. Like, this is a game that fundamentally was made 9 years ago originally, and had DLC back on its original system, came out fresh here, and then just continued to sell. And then probably at the point at which Nintendo would imagine it would drop off, they're like, by the way, the last 2 years of the Switch's life cycle, let's just juice it again with more Mario
for
Kart.
Me personally, and I know that the sales don't represent this, I would have preferred that there was one DLC pack per year for the last 6 years.
Right, exactly.
But because it was already selling so strongly, Nintendo, we don't need to do that.
Exactly.
Whatever. And then they pumped them all out in the last 2 years. But, I'm a pretty keen Nintendo gamer compared to the majority of Switch owners, so I get why they did what they did. But yeah, they're great tracks nonetheless. And yeah, Mario Kart 8 always needs a shout out.
It does make you wonder with the next one, are they going to fully service it in that way, where it's like, we'll just keep every month you're going to get new track or something, like, could be a way to do it. It's a way that they can potentially just keep it relevant all year round, non-stop.
Have Nintendo ever successfully kept an online game relevant?
No.
I think they try in and around the edges with like Splatoon. I think you could make the argument that they pretty much dropped the ball on keeping it relevant with something like Animal Crossing.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then beyond that, I'm struggling to think of good examples, but like...
Yeah, it's really Mario Kart and Smash are the two examples where they...
Yes, okay, Smash, you got to give it credit with this constant reveals with the characters with Smash.
Yeah, and partly that's why I think they did this Mario Kart 8 thing, is because they ran out of Smash content to get people excited. So like, what other game do we have that we can juice in the meantime?
But I think in its own weird way, that's a good example of keeping a community hyped and excited for... arguably DLC content. I think that's probably the most successful example. Yeah. But they don't do it often, and God, that took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears from Sakurai. So like,
yes, absolutely. God. Yeah. Sorry, you should call him by his true title, YouTuber Sakurai.
YouTuber Sakurai.
That's who he is now. No longer a game developer.
PlayStation owning Sakurai.
Yep. It is. Look at his entertainment center, man. He's got them all. He's on his exercise bike. I think Sakurai actually still probably plays more video games than us every year. Like he's a monster. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like that man's insane.
One game per hand. He can just do it once. Like,
he probably does. God, do you remember? I sent you that tweet and Sakurai being like, I 100%ed Mario and Spider-Man in one weekend. I was like, this man is like way more hardcore than we are. Like ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. What a dude. I love it. All right. My number 6, Bally, is A Plague Tale Requiem.
Very
One of
nice.
my favorite experiences I had this year. Really, really got to love this series. I think it's full of so many cool things.
This is the second one.
The second one, yes.
I keep getting the names confused.
Right,
Yeah.
Innocence is the first one.
Innocence.
Requiem is the second one. I actually have, since we did this list, I hadn't played Innocence until December of last. I think I finished it after our GOTYTDACOTY last year, so it didn't count for last year. But since then, I've played that and the sequel. I think the sequel's the stronger game of the two, so that's the one that's on my list. But I think it's a real kind of interesting competitor in the space of the Sony style game, and I think it has different priorities, which makes it more interesting. It's stealth focused, and I think it just has a lot of good pacing to it, where you go to lots of different environments. It's gorgeous, absolutely stunning game. It really centers on this relationship, the sibling relationship, which I think is a little underexplored in games. We've often had dad games, right, from Sony with God of War and Last of Us and even Uncharted in some senses. And I think that this kind of brother-sister relationship is one that has not really been explored that much, and I think is a really, really strong one, and you really feel it very intimately, and the interactions are great, the writing is really strong, and there's a lot of intrigue and kind of wonder about what's happening in this world. What is this plague? Where does it come from? It's this kind of mix of magic and kind of reality of like the history of what happened back in that era in France, but what actually, like, how they blend it with this kind of supernatural element, and with the rats. Like, the technology behind the rats is amazing, where there's just these waves of fucking things on the screen, and it's almost like a water in a way when they're chasing you, these kind of big cinematic set pieces that you'd expect to see in an Uncharted game, where you're running towards the camera and the buildings are crumbling behind you and there's just rats pouring out of every orifice. It's a real spectacle, and I think they get as close as you can without having the ridiculous budget that those other games do, but they still make it look really, really strong and really good. So excellent just pacing between narrative sections, stealth sections, puzzle solving. There's actually really strong puzzle solving in this game, where it uses the environment, and you have your slingshot. Your slingshot can like knock things down and draw rats away. Like you hit down like a bag of meat and that draws them, but there's these light sources as well that they get scared away by, and sometimes you have to move through with torches. Like, excellent just story and pacing and narrative. I think it's really, really good. And yeah, I think this is a series you would really enjoy, Bally. It definitely speaks to
definitely.
a lot of the
Everyone needs to
sensibilities
get to
that you like in games. So definitely recommend it to people out there. Plague Tale Requiem. And I look forward to seeing what they do with the next one, because I'm sure they will do another one.
Oh, nice.
Really
Trilogy.
cool. Yeah. All right. Bally, we're into the top 5.
Top 5. My number 5 is Disc Room.
Oh, yeah.
This is a game I played nearish the start of the year, I want to say, and it is bullet hell, but replace bullets with discs, like chained metal discs that cut you up and you want to avoid, kind of discs. And then imagine like a big grid, and each square within the grid is a room, a disc room, and in each room is a challenge to avoid discs in a bullet hell kind of format. So you're just moving your character around trying to avoid discs. That's the game, but what I love about the game is they really mix up what you're trying to do and the way that certain discs move, and they kind of flip it on its head. Like, one of the rooms you're like invisible, or another room, and then you get abilities, and there's other things you can do where you can like slow down time, and there's kind of like pseudo boss fights in some of these rooms, and it's only like a 2 to 3 hour game, but I really think that I love short games where they take an idea and then they just keep rolling the dice on that idea and mix it up and do strange things, and then just before it gets repetitive or boring, the game ends. And I think this game is a good example of that, where it takes an idea, you've got all these different rooms to go through, and you're kind of unlocking, I don't know if it's keys or something, but you need like a certain number of points to then unlock the next room, and it keeps going until you eventually face the final boss, the final room, the final challenge. And it's a very satisfying fight, and then the game ends and you're like, wow, I really enjoyed that. And it's just a very simple concept, moving your character around to avoid getting killed by spinning discs. It's really simple, but I think it's actually a really nice game, and you should definitely try it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I played this as well early in the year, and yeah, it has a great kind of sense of uniqueness to it. I've never really quite played anything like it, and I think it's nice because it offers, for people who are hardcore about it, it offers that kind of high score chasing element where I was able to see Bally's scores because he played it before me, and so every time I got into a room, I'd be like, have to survive longer than Bally did, you know? Like, I always love when games do that. We've had it before with obviously Ollie Ollie World was a big one for us, but also the Bit Trip game, like Bit Trip 1 and 2 was a big one. Yeah, I always it's a shame we didn't play Neon White at the time because I think that would have been a big one as well. But yeah, I love whenever that stuff happens because it's high score chasing is a fun thing as long as it's like against other people, right? I don't like doing it of its own accord, but if you have a challenge and you're like, well, my friend's better than me, I need to chase that and make sure I win. It's always a good time. So shout out for that stuff. All right,
your number 5, MBZ.
My number 5, Bally. Yeah, okay, so my number 5 is Horizon Forbidden West. In no universe did I ever think I'd be putting this game on a top list, let alone in the top 5.
Now, we've talked a lot about this game on our Nintendo show.
We have, yes.
In short, last year I played this game in and around when Bally Jr. was born, and I said how like it was just this great experience while Bally Jr. was asleep. It was just, I'd escape to this world of the Forbidden West and enjoy all these things. And I think you felt potentially that might have tainted my view that it was like a good escapism kind of game.
Sure, yeah.
Having a small child, looking after a small child early on. So it was so nice that you did play this game and had a good time.
So I was forced into playing this game because I had to judge it for BAFTA purposes. So I was like, okay, well, I have to play this. And if I'm honest, I had a really bad time at the beginning. I thought the beginning was quite rough.
It's not the best beginning.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rough opening, and I kind of just chafed against it in the same way that I did the first game. And, you know, I played a bit of it and then I kind of left it for a while. But then I came back to it and I found a weird thing happening. I started to really enjoy it, and I wasn't sure why. I was like, what's going on here? Why am I having fun with this? I think part of it is like the combat feels so much better than before. Honestly, a big part of it is the music is really good in this game. This game has, you know, I think we complain a lot of the time about like, you know, these big AAA games getting nominated for best soundtrack and none of them being memorable.
This was at the Game Awards last year, actually. This soundtrack.
It was. And like there are and I'm not talking about the big bombastic themes, but like your base, like the base that you have with all your characters, the kind of Mass Effect style hub, the music in that area is so good. Like there's something so homely and nice about it, but like every time I was exploring the open world, I had that sense of just comfort, and I think the music played such a large role in that. I just really enjoyed a lot of the tracks in this game, and it really soothed things over, I think. And I liked it so much, I ended up buying the DLC straight away and playing that DLC as well.
Insane.
Which is great.
Which I've not touched yet, and I'd quite like to get to.
The DLC actually has like a better finale, a more spectacular ending than the main game. Like, it really goes ball to the walls. And yeah, I honestly, you know, I think over the years, we build up these caricatures of ourselves, Bally, where like, you know, I'm a figurehead for hating Octopath and Horizon, all these things. And like, I don't really in that way, but if, you know, when you kind of talk on a podcast, you have to get a bit more, I don't know, over the top about these things. And
I mean, you don't have to.
No, you don't have to, but otherwise it doesn't make for very interesting listening. You know, you gotta buff things up a little bit. Can't just be regular me. Regular me would be very boring on a podcast, I tell you what. But you know, podcast me much more interesting. But yeah, for Horizon is one of those things. I think our audience would be like, oh, but you hated that first game. What are you doing? But yeah, I really liked it. And yeah, it's great, and I think the story was so much better than the first game. Had a lot more hooks into it. Interesting combat mechanics. I found a weapon that I loved, like my exploding spears. They fucking carried me the whole game. The best weapon I had, just so good. And yeah, really helped when it came to those encounters where I was like, oh, I kind of can't be bothered to aim now. I'm just going to throw exploding spears until you die. And that was a really nice thing. Kind of let me mold the experience to my taste a bit more, which I thought was great. So yeah, Horizon Forbidden West.
I think we're in general agreement, and we talked about this on the Nintendo show as well, but like PS5 has had a lot of sequels. There's not much new IP floating around PS5. There's a couple, but
yeah,
out of all the sequels, we kind of broadly agree that like the step up from Zero Dawn to Forbidden West is like the biggest step up.
Oh, by far. Definitely.
So that's where I think this game is so impressive. Like, it really does improve on combat and narrative stuff and side quests, and like the cutscenes are good. And as you say, the music, it's like these are core tenets of like that type of open world game. So for them to get all these things right and improved, like it's a really special game.
The faces in this game were so good that it just made me think Spider-Man 2 was a bad looking video game by comparison. That's how impressive this game is visually. It really is something else. So man. Also, it's one of the first games I played fully on like a 4K TV, and just Jesus Christ, that's it's a visual feast, let me tell you. So it's my number 5, Horizon Forbidden West. Who thought we'd be in this timeline? Here we are.
No.
All right, Bally, number 4 for you.
My number 4 is a game that I've just played.
Oh, nice.
Toem.
Yeah.
So this game is on Game Pass, so definitely wanted to give it a go. For Toem, for those who don't know, it's a little kind of short adventure style where you're kind of like doing little tasks for people, and most of those tasks involve taking photos. It's kind of like got pacing similar to, I'd say, something like a Short Hike, although the world design is very different. I will say I'm not sure I love the idea that like you go from like one cube to the next, almost like you kind of look at this what's the isometric.
Yeah, it's an angle, yeah.
Yeah, and rather than having one continuous world, it's like little tiny loading screens linking up lots of different blocks.
Mini diorama areas.
Dioramas is the right word, exactly.
That make up kind of a city or a place or a park or whatever, right? But
yeah, and there's like, the mountain area, the city, the forest area, the kind of beachy kind of area. Like, I do like the theming of the areas. It's really nice. And I think what's so great about this game is that like it kind of does a pseudo Mario Odyssey thing where it keeps the pace up and it says, here's a list of tasks. You need to complete half of them to progress. And I'm like, okay. And then you're completely free to do whichever tasks you want to do. So if one of them is asking you for something incredibly specific and you need to take a picture of this thing at this moment in order to progress this one thing, because you essentially need enough stamps to get to the next area, similar to like Moons in Odyssey. And I think that was one of the highlights for me, was it was just really chill to just go and explore and be like, oh, I'll take a picture of that. Oh, actually, this person wants a picture of that before I'd even realized that that's what they wanted. I get a stamp. Great. I need 5 more stamps, and then I'll move on to next thing. And I think that pacing and just the chill nature of like speaking to these characters, it's very kind of an Animal Crossing, Short Hike-ish in the way that like there are these characters in the world just doing their thing and you're kind of interacting with them. And I really like that about it. It's all about the chill nature. I think that it's a lot less about the photography. So compared to something like, I don't know, a Pokemon Snap, where they're obsessed with what's the Pokemon doing? What's the action they're doing? What's the size of the Pokemon? How does this work? How does that look compared to how many Pokemon are in the shot? It's like, it doesn't really matter in this game. It's like, you've got a shot of that thing that they wanted. Boom, you've done it. And I like that nature. I like that fast-paced nature to this game. And it wraps up in a really nice way. I think like the whole game is black and white. I will say there is, without spoilers, there is some color in this game, and I like the way that they introduce that. I think it's clever compared to, say, a game like what was that game last year? Oh my god, the black and white game.
There's a lot of black and white games.
What's the one with where Lana Rain did the soundtrack and everything?
Chicory.
Chicory, yeah.
Yes.
I think this game handles the whole black and white thing a bit nicer than Chicory did, perhaps.
Got you. Okay.
But yeah, it's. I thought this game was really cool. I think that I never felt like I was going to be the person to go in 100% at all. I think some of the more intricate tasks they want you to do are quite difficult and challenging, and really take a lot of puzzle solving.
I'm pretty sure I did everything in this game. I think I did do every task.
You did every task?
Yes, I did.
Oh, wow.
I think it took me like maybe 5-6 hours to do everything.
Okay,
but yeah, I really did enjoy just going around and doing everything. Obviously, you're playing this just trying to finish it before we, record and everything.
A little bit, but yeah.
But yeah, I definitely took my time with it as well. I think the really nice thing about this game is how it plays with perspective, where you see it as you're wandering around the world, it's isometric, but at any moment you snap into first person with your camera, and then you can look around the world, and it's really nice where you maybe go up to a place and you look behind a building that is blocking something. You can't see it from the isometric perspective, but as soon as you go in first person, you can then look at the world through a different lens and see things hidden.
I think that'll be the number one reason why it is those little dioramas that you walk between, because if they were rendering an entire world every time you went back into first person, it might lose a bit of the charming nature of what they're trying to go for, where it's like you can just see what you're looking at in this diorama before moving to the next one.
I think it's also like a mental load thing where it's like, oh, where did I see the pigeons? Oh, they are on that screen that I associate with this bench, and I know where that is relative to things, right? So I think it's a nice little design thing as well, which is very cool.
I also shout outs to the developer name, which I just love. They are called Something We Made.
Yeah.
Which I just think is such a cool little like indie developer name to go, here's something we made. And it really has that, like, you would believe that this is the type of game a developer named Something We Made would kind of make. Like, this feels like very handcrafted, very, charming, cute, short, but, impactful. And I really like that about Toem. Very, very good game.
Yeah, no, it's great. I had a great time with it, and I'm glad you finally got around to it. It's definitely,
I think it was on number 10 or 9 last year.
Yeah, I think it made it onto, maybe it was 2021, but I think it definitely made it.
Oh, was it 21?
Yeah, because I believe it was in the year of unpacking and a bunch of that stuff, right? So, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Term, and I think, again, if you're looking for great, like, we should probably do a list at some point of, like, what are the top 10 short games on Switch that people should check out. I definitely put this on there, I think.
Definitely.
Along with a lot of others that we love.
Great game.
So,
Term.
Yeah, Term is great. Alrighty, my number 4. My number 4 is another game that has been sticking around with me for a lot of this year, that I've come back to a lot and eventually finally wrapped up. That is Rogue Legacy 2. So I was a huge fan of the original Rogue Legacy, the first game that really got me into roguelikes in the first place, and I never finished Rogue Legacy 1. I think I only ever beat the first boss in that game, and then I kind of dropped off it, because that's kind of how I treated roguelikes back then. I never really was into finishing them necessarily, and as the years have gone on, roguelikes have, been something that initially I was very, against, to becoming one of my favorite genres in the space, which is a very weird turn that's happened, but I think that they have just gotten better and better as the years have gone on, and some of the best games that have come out have been in that space. So I was very interested in checking out Rogue Legacy 2, and it's a really big step up in so many ways. I think visually it is stunning. Like, I think there's that thing in your mind's eye where you're like, oh yeah, this probably looks like what Rogue Legacy 1 looked like, and then you go back to Rogue Legacy 1, you're like, oh no, that was a fully pixel art game, and it looks way different to this, and nowhere near as like crisp and polished. Rogue Legacy 2, it's rendered in 3D, but it's in that stylized way where it's kind of like Mario Wonder in a way, where it's like it's in 3D rendered, but in a art style that is so aesthetically pleasing that it almost feels 2D in that way, right? And the characters and the sharp sheen to them, it's a gorgeous looking thing, and that is a real standout element of the game, and part of the reason why it's so cool. But overall, it's just the way that it's structured is super different, where you will have an area, and that area's goal is, okay, can I find the thing in here that opens up the boss room and fight the boss? And then once you've beaten that boss, you can then find the next area, but you never have to play through that previous area again. You'll get a teleporter. So you finish that first area, you get a teleporter that means every time you start a run, you can teleport straight to the next area you want to tackle. And so it's almost segmented roguelike, where you're having this one area that you're doing, you're usually spending 20 to 30 minutes in that one space, fighting a boss, and then you complete it, move on to the next one. And it gives it a bit more of a traditional game feel, which I think you might like, Bally, as someone else who finds it, roguelikes are tricky to be like, when am I done with a roguelike, With Rogue Legacy 2, because it has the segmented nature to it, it does feel almost Metroidvania in a way, because you also get abilities as you go. So like Dead Cells, you'll get different things that let you traverse places you wouldn't be able to get to before. So there is a more of a linear approach to it. And the nice thing about it is, like, I started it on my plane to GDC back in March, and I think I finished it in like September. And that is constantly me just chipping away at it, similar to the ramp, right? when I was playing Rogue Legacy 2, that was my go-to in-bed game, where it's like, great, I've got half an hour before I go to sleep, let's do a run. Let's get through this area, see how far I can get through it.
That's good restraint to not just be like, and now it's 3 a.m. and I've not slept.
No, definitely. I think that's why that's why I've gravitated more towards roguelikes. They are the perfect before bed experience where you know that a run will take maximum, 40 minutes.
It's not open world game where you're like, oh crap, but it's now, the time has just flown by.
Playing Tears of the Kingdom in bed, terrible idea. Never do that. Just don't. But with roguelikes, it's like, well, I know I'm going to have a cap. There's a hard cap on how long this can go for before I either die. And, sometimes it's like, oh, I died in 5 minutes. Let's do another one because I've got enough time to do that, right? So there's a fun to it as well of like, oh, that wasn't a real run. Now I've got to do one real
like
run
us
before.
Passing the controller between each other back in the day. Like, no, that wasn't proper go. I need
exactly. Yeah, like that one time when we were all doing that last level of Galaxy 2 at your place. Like, oh my god. But yeah, Rogue Legacy 2 is definitely it ups the ante in so many different ways. There's like 8 or 9 different classes with different weapons and styles. I gravitated towards the chef. The chef is so cool because basically what it does is you hit someone with the pan and they start taking damage over time. So what you could do is you could hit enemies, just wander away, hit another enemy, and by the time you'd hit that other enemy, the previous one had died from damage over time with the pan, where the pan just like keeps him on fire basically. And I loved that. The chef was just like a kind of a hit and run character where you hit him, jump away, and the room would eventually be cleared out from that. And I really loved playing as that archetype. It was the one that I leveled up the most, and each character, you have kind of a level for each of those types, which is great. Just so much variety and loads of stuff. I think the way that it has kind of a definitive ending to it made me less like Hades want to go back to it, because I was like, well, I'm done now, I'm kind of finished. But I appreciated that about it as well, because I definitely put like 35-40 hours into Rogue Legacy 2 over the course of like 6 or so months, and I think it's great. And honestly, I think you can probably skip the first game and just go to this one, because I think it's just better in every single way. And just
are they linked
super
narratively?
I don't think there's any narrative. There is narrative. Again, this is one of these things, Bally, where if it's a game where I don't care about the narrative, I just won't pay attention to it. There is so much, like, there's these rooms where you can read these diary entries. I clicked A on them and just instantly closed them every single time. I just didn't. I don't. There's a story here. I have no idea what it was about. But yes, I don't think it's worth playing Rogue Legacy 1 just to get to Rogue Legacy 2 is what I'm saying. You can jump in with 2 and think you'll be fine. So.
Nice.
All right. Number 3, Bally.
Number 3. Well, this is where I reveal myself as a big old cheater. So I'm going to do 3 and 2. And those games are Advance Wars Reboot Camp. So for those who don't know, both games are in the one game. And yes, it's a remake, but equally it's kind of a remaster in a way, because it's just been up-resed, and mechanically there's not a whole lot different to these games. So for the purposes of having 10 games, I thought it was a good place to stick this game.
This is the one thing where it is going to ruin the list, Bally, because I can't put the same thing twice in one list, so it is just going to be Reboot Camp.
Well, you could just put the original games. You can put Advance Wars 2 and then put Advance Wars 1.
Oh, that's true. I could put 1 plus 2. That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
You don't
very
have
true.
to put Reboot Camp in there. And yeah, I think Advance Wars 2 I would rate at number 2, and Advance Wars 1 at number 3. And that's just because...
Wow, okay. That's really interesting, because I think... my sense was that you found Advance Wars 2 is even more brutal this time than you did previously.
Yes, I won't shy away from still admitting those final few levels are incredibly brutal, but I stand by it's more fun to play as all the different COs, and then there's a multitude of missions where you can mix and match your favorite COs, and they fight together essentially in 2, whereas 1 you're always playing as the Red Army, or the Orange Star Army against all the other armies, and then it's kind of only by the end that you're facing Sturm, whereas the second game, you're always facing Black Hole Rising, their army, so you're constantly mixing up all the different COs more in the second game, which I enjoyed more, and it's a more of a challenging game. But yeah, both games are still fantastic. I think I spent 40-50 hours or something with both these games. Like, it took me a while, and I had a blast. I will say I did also play Wargroove 2 this year, and
yes,
I did have a slightly better time with that game than these games, but Advance Wars still holds up. I still want more Advance Wars. I still think Nintendo have it in them that, this was remakes were remake, I should say, was Way Forward, but maybe someone else could have a go. Maybe Way Forward could make their own unique game. I don't know, but these games are really strong. I think that strategically, chess style based, turn based tactics, I'm still really, really into, especially with this setting. Like I still really enjoy the kind of the cutesy tanks and this, that, and the other. And it was nice that this game did finally come out in the political context. And yeah, I had a damn good time. I'm really interested to know how well it sold. I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those games Nintendo hasn't given numbers for, which is probably not a great sign.
No. And equally, once it came out, they didn't exactly promote it a ton in the same way
no.
with other games. And yeah, but
really feel like it was just cursed right from the beginning.
A little bit. But we'll see. Who knows where Advance Wars goes? And if an Advance Wars never comes out again, I am still quite happy with where Wargroove is at. And I think the future of turn-based strategy tactics is doing fine. So yeah, I still really rate Advance Wars, and that's why they're number 2 and 3 on this list.
Oh, taking up so much space here, right at the top, Advance Wars, as always. So my number 3, I think, is your number 1, Bally.
Probably, yeah.
So my number 3 is Metro Prime Federation Force, but let's skip it for now because we can have a conversation when you talk about it. Number 1. Let's jump on to my number 2, which is Chained Echoes. Oh baby! So obviously this came out at the end of last year, the very end of last year, and I think some people are like, well, should we count it for this year's Game of the Year and stuff like that? And
it's tricky. It could go in either list.
And I've had it in both lists this whole time. Ultimately, like, you haven't played it yet, and I think it's fine to just not have it on that list. And it did technically come out last year, so I decided to put it here. It is one of my favorite things I've played this year, clearly at number 2. I think this game it is, what if JRPGs grew up? What if JRPGs looked at themselves and said, hey, we've been fucking around for too long. We've been saddling players with a bunch of bullshit. How about we just clean up our room? Like, JRPGs are an unruly teenager, Their room is dirty. There's ramen pots in the cupboard. It's just, no one has been in that room for ages. And all of a sudden, Chained Echoes is like, what if something happened to that JRPG person and they suddenly got their shit together and they're like, I'm going to clean up my act. That's what this game is. It says, no, you don't have to worry about grinding. Yes, you can run away from any battle with no consequence. You can switch out party members and there'll be no effect. In fact, it's part of the strategy. You don't have to worry about regenning and refilling health and mana between battles. We'll just do that for you. It just has all these things that for me are these constant plagues on the smoothness of a JRPG experience and just lets them all go. And you know what? It's all the better for it. It just really trims the fat and makes it into such a more streamlined experience. It made it so that anytime I jumped in, I was never worried about any of those things, and I just could have a really enjoyable time running through these awesome looking places with this really lovely hand-drawn, this pixel art style that evokes 16-bit, but is a bit more advanced than that. Amazing soundtrack, just really, really great music throughout. I think, it's interesting that this and Sea of Stars have come out so close to each other because, like I've said before, they really are the Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger of kind of indie RPGs, right, where Chained Echoes is Final Fantasy VI and it has a really ensemble cast. All these characters are unique and different. It will cut away to these political goings on in the world and have a bunch of cutscenes and you're like, what does any of that mean? And you won't understand until later or until you replay the game. It really focuses on a wild, twisting story that has some real cool stuff in the end game, and though the writing itself is a little bit off because it was written by Matthias Linder, who is a German speaker first and foremost, it has a little bit of that kind of classic charm of those RPGs where localization was a little rough back in the day, Final Fantasy VI is a really well-written game, but you can definitely see that it was like a little bit of a rough localization, and this even captures that because of the fact that it's not a native English speaker who's writing the game, which I think does add a bit to the charm, honestly. And yeah, I just really love the uniqueness of this combat system, the fact that it's this whole like this bar where you have to keep your dial between the green kind of section. If you go into the red, you get punished. If you go below, you get punished. And it's this balance of, I want to attack these enemies, but I need to make a decision to make sure that I stay in the green the whole time. It's a real balance, and one of the most interesting combat systems I've seen in a really long time in a game like this. Ultimately, for me, this comes out as a stronger game than Sea of Stars. I like it more. I think it speaks to me more. And I think both games are really, really great, and they're excellent, and they do their own thing, and I think it's great that they can both exist. But for me, Chained Echoes really is the one to beat, and it's a little bit of a shame that it's not got as much critical acclaim or sales as Sea of Stars, because Sea of Stars, I think,
a strange time doesn't help.
Yeah, it came out at a really awkward time, and I think Sea of Stars is just a bit more pretty. Like, it's just a bit more polished and pretty, and has a bit more of a glow about it. It's a bit more triple I would say, Sea of Stars, and so it's naturally going to get more attention from a mainstream crowd. But at its heart, at its core, Chained Echoes is the one that really sings. And if you're a big RPG fan, I feel like Chained Echoes is the one that you're going to come out on the other side being a bigger fan of. And yeah, I'm really interested to follow what Matthias Linde does next, because this is a stellar first effort, honestly, and I think that there's a lot more that can be kind of wrung out of this kind of modernizing of this genre and what they can do with it. Tremendous, just like awesome all around, and yeah, one of my very favorite things I've played. So awesome. Chained Echoes, my number 2.
Great. Shall I go to my number 1?
Yes, let's talk about it.
It is, of course, Metroid Prime Federation Force.
Yeah, of course, yes. My number 3, Metroid Prime Federation Force. What a game, Bally. Who would have thought
what a game.
That in the year 2023, we go back to this often maligned 3DS entry, black sheep of the series, you might say.
Yes.
And it turns out it's fucking great. Actually, it's really good, and everyone's wrong.
So, we did spend a whole episode talking about this game with a listener of the show, Matt Lorgan, who obviously played with us.
Yes.
And I stand by what I said. I think that, my fear going into it was this would be pseudo Halo. And what I meant by that was we're going to go and face some waves of enemies. And beyond that, I'm nervous about how the game mixes up design, keeps it fresh, what the bosses like, what's the level design like, and it excels in all of those. I think it's got a great variety of bosses. It's a great variety of what you're doing in each level. There's very small amounts of repetition when it comes to waves of enemies. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still waves of enemies in different guises, I guess you could say, but I never felt like the game was like, oh, here we go again. Maybe 1 or 2 errors, but for the most part, it just felt fresh and exciting to like explore a new level and see what unfolded and how do you defeat this boss. And obviously playing together cooperatively is great fun. I think the co-op aspect is done pretty well. Biggest downside is probably my fingers feeling sore from like first-person shooting combat on a 3DS. It was not fun at all. But on the upside with the 3DS, the 3D looked fantastic. So if I could have like a comfortable controller but still got the benefit of the 3D, that would be amazing. But Metroid Prime Federation Force should not be missed. Although if you have missed it, I guess it's hard to play now. But it's still a great game, and I'm really glad that we managed to play it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's up the standards for Metroid Prime. I don't think Metroid Prime can really stand up to it at this point. It's just raised the bar so high.
Are they going to introduce co-op to Metroid Prime 4?
Well, maybe I'd be more interested in Metroid Prime 4 if that was the case. If you could carry me through it.
You should play Metroid Prime Remastered and then make it.
Yeah, I know. Oh, God. I wish by this point in time I had, but I don't have the ammo yet. I still need to play it. I just loved the experience of playing this. This was great fun, like, every week or so, or every, whenever we had time, jumping on in the evening and just having, an hour or hour and a half of, let's do a couple of levels. Or
until my fingers got sore.
Yeah, exactly. And Bally was like, we need to stop now, I'm gonna die. So that was just great. And shout out to Matt, thanks so much to him for playing along with us. I think it would have been a much lesser experience with just 2 of us playing it. I think the game is not balanced in that way. Really, the game is balanced for 4 players, and I think we struggled because we had 3, right? Like, there's definitely, I don't think we fully died on some of those fights, but we got damn close, and it was always just by the skin of our teeth getting through it.
Yeah, really good difficulty balance for sure.
Yes, yeah. So I
With 3
almost,
players.
yeah, I almost did prefer it with 3 because I wonder if 4 would have just been a bit too easy, or at least might have not
It
tested
helped
us.
that Matt
in
was
way.
very good at the game.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
the 4th
Yes.
player was less good, then I don't know. But
Yeah. No, it's great, and I love the idea of like one person can go off and find a secret, and then everybody gets rewarded for it, right? With the mod chip system,
Right.
where it doesn't matter if you're hanging out and doing something else, your friend could be over in a corner and find something, and everyone's like, "Oh, nice one, you found the chip. Where did you find it?" And be like, "Oh, I saw that secret," and it's like, who's the one to spot the secret? Is always a fun thing. So. Yeah, I love it. Metro Prime Federation Force. I'm glad that it's at the top of a list because
Exactly.
it deserves to be there in some ways. So, love it. All right, Bally, are you ready for my number 1?
Yeah, I can't even think what this game is.
Okay, here we go. Well, Bally, it's been many years in the making. I finally completed my full transformation into a weeb. It's now happened. I'm here. Last year, of course.
Some random crap.
Last year, of course, my number 2 game was AI the Somnium Files, right? My number 1 was Beat Saber, right? This year, Bally.
Is Beat Saber a weeby game?
No. That's why I'm saying my transformation is now complete, because last year a visual novel was my number 2 last year, but now it is my number 1, and it has to be the game that really I should have played 13 years ago when James Jones on RFN told me to. 999. 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors.
There we go.
I fucking love this game. It is so good. A lot of this experience was obviously with the Discord. Everyone in there's a lot of people who listen to the show who are fans of this game.
You put together a podcast.
We did. We did an entire podcast where I got folks from Discord to jump on with me to talk about it. People who are...
I need to play this game and then listen to that podcast.
Yes,
that's my
absolutely. And so like we had this whole experience of chatting through it and them telling me about the original DS version, because I played it on Steam Deck on PC because that's the most accessible version today. But like mind-blowing revelations were had where there are things that this game does on DS that simply no other video game console could do. This game is made for the Nintendo DS, and there are story revelations related to the fact that it is a DS game. It's fucking mind-blowing, and it almost makes me wish that I had played the DS version. But the thing with the DS version is it's not as refined in terms of the replayability. A lot of the reason you play these games is you get to an ending and it's a bad ending. And like the first ending I got to, like... I was just stabbed in the back by somebody and I didn't know who it was and my character died. And that's an ending after playing like 9 hours of the game. That was the end. And that's not a satisfying ending. And so what you do is you go back into the timeline and you make different choices. You make different decisions. And that splinters down this whole chart where there's like 4 or 5 different branches. And going through every single timeline, seeing what gets revealed, the revealing of information in this game, the way that it is done, the masterful way in which it subverts expectations and then just throws in these wild things, these whole kind of situations you have with characters where they start talking pseudoscience and just these wild things that are going on. It's this real mix of real world stuff with a lot of supernatural and just kind of, as I say, pseudoscience, like stuff that could be reality but isn't. It's remarkably good. It's so well written. It's really well voice acted as well, and I just think it's just a great experience top to bottom. The ending, like I feel like this year generally when I look back on it, I haven't been super compelled to like really, like there's not been many games that grabbed me and shook me and said all I want to do is play this video game. And I don't know if that's just a thing of like, just being tired or whatever, or stuff like that, or just...
You're also harder to please as a gamer.
Maybe, but I don't know. I think like there's a not burnout, but like, we just played so many games and we just do this so often that it sometimes is like, it takes a lot to just kind of grab you and just really like, all I want to do is play this game. And when I got to the last like 5-6 hours of this, I could not be stopped. I was just glued to my screen wanting to find out what happened, right? Just the revelations that took place, the reveals, the mystery, it just absolutely wouldn't let go of me. And I think that to me speaks to why it's my number 1, is just because it was kind of a slow ramp, and I think the middle of the game does have a little bit of bagginess to it, but that ending and the way that it just all comes together. It just sticks so strongly with me. And yeah, I've been told by everybody that the sequel to this game, Virtue's Last Reward, is even better, is like way better. And that to me is the most exciting thing you could say. Because if I liked 999 this much, dear God, am I excited to play the sequel. So it's fantastic. And I strongly recommend that people check it out. And yeah, that is my number one. 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. And with that, Bally, I am now a weeb. Please declare me as the Pope.
There we go.
The weeb Pope. So that's it. That's our list, Bally. It's.
I told you I had 10 games.
You did. You somehow had 10 games. Which, I think this list should always have as many loopholes as possible. I think it's the list that I'm the most chill with, where I'm like, this is how it's going to be. I think that I appreciate that, you managed to pull it all together at the last minute, which is great.
About.
Yeah, just about. So, Bally, shall we rattle back through our lists and tell everybody what they were in order? Do you want to go first?
My number 10 was Sports Story. My number 9 was Inmost. Number 8, Pilot Wing 64. Number 7, Solar Ash. Number 6, Mario Kart 8. I guess that's Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yes.
Number 5, Disc Room. Number 4, Toem. Number 3, Advance Wars Reboot Camp, Advance Wars 1. Number 2, Advance Wars Reboot Camp, Advance Wars 2. And number 1 was Metroid Prime Federation Force.
Lovely stuff. My number 10 was The Ramp. My number 9 was Mega Man 6. Number 8 was Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. Number 7 was Lost Judgment, The Kaito Files. Number 6 was A Plague Tale Requiem. Number 5 was Horizon Forbidden West. Number 4 was Rogue Legacy 2. Number 3 was Metroid Prime Federation Force. Number 2 was Chained Echoes. And number 1 was 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. I'm pretty happy with my list this year. I think there's definitely some stuff that I would have liked to get to. I counted, and I think my balance this year, I still did play more old games than new games, but it is a very kind of like fickle balance now between how many there were. So it was, I think next year's probably, hopefully, going to be a little bit different.
Like we were saying, this was an insane year for a number of new releases, and it's completely bogged me down to make this a properly fleshed out list. And 3 games that I really want to get to, and I know that all 3 of them will probably feature in my top 10, are Sea of Stars, Dave the Diver, and Dredge. I really want to get to all 3 of those games. Sea of Stars is already on Game Pass. The other 2 are on Switch. I'm confident at least one or both will be on Game Pass at least by halfway through next year. So
yeah,
I definitely want to get to all 3 of those games because long games, fishing games. Bally
is a fishing game aficionado.
I do like that type of game. So I think Dave the Diver will hook me hard. Excuse the pun.
Yeah, I've been looking at it. I was very close to buying it in the Steam sale recently, and I probably will break and buy it over Christmas when it goes on sale for the Game Awards sale. Nice. I probably will do that. So
I hear the Switch version might have some issues. Are you going to get it on Steam Deck?
Yeah, I'm going to get it on Steam so I can play it either on PC or on Steam Deck. I think it's probably good on Switch. I've heard good things about it on Switch, but maybe loading times is the problem there.
Yeah, I might get it on Series X.
Yeah.
Quick resume.
Absolutely. So a couple of games for me that didn't quite make the cut were Grapple Dog. Grapple Dog is a really cool little platformer that I played that I enjoyed that was very cool, but didn't quite make the list. And Kuru Kuru Kururin, which I played for the first time last year, the classic stick spinning game that was added to Nintendo Switch Online out of nowhere, which was very, very nice, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was one of those games where I did have to just abuse save states, otherwise I just never would have finished it, because the end of that game is just like, are you fucking kidding me? You expect me to get through this entire 2-minute sequence not getting hit at all? You have got to be joking. So Kuru Kuru Kurin, very much the Dark Souls of puzzle games, I guess. Spinning stick puzzle games is fucking difficult, but it's very, very cool as an idea, as a concept. I'm glad that I finally got around to that kind of weird piece of Nintendo history, so that definitely could have featured. Disc Room as well, another one that you mentioned was close but didn't quite make it for me, but yeah, I think for me, Bally, next year in terms of old games I want to play, I did spend a lot of this year buying 3DS games, so I should probably make good on actually playing those 3DS games. So I think part of my my thing next year is going to be I've got to play some of those old 3DS games that I bought and make good on playing them, because I spent a lot of money just getting that collection in shape, and I do want to play all of them, so I definitely want to do that.
If I can find the time, I would not be surprised if my number one next year is Elden Ring.
Oh boy, okay.
That would be a nice thing to happen. We'll
absolutely. See. Yeah, absolutely. So fingers crossed, we shall see. But that is going to do us for today's episode. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for sending in their lists as well. And hopefully you enjoyed our lists also. But Bally, we're not done with lists. People can, of course, send lists in for their Game of the Years for 2023. And where can they send those to?
Please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And if you would like to take part in a little community Game of the Year, I am going to be posting, when this episode goes live, in Discord, on Twitter, probably try and put a link of it into the description of this show. I'm going to be posting a Google form, which basically will ask you for 5 games, your 5 favorite games of the year that came out on Switch. You don't have to have 5 games. You can have 2 games, you can have 3 games, but just fill in however many games you have on that 5 list. And what I will do is I will take that list, collate them all together, and on the final show of the year, on our Game of the Year show, at the very end, I will read out what the listener voted Game of the Year is. And we'll go in order and we'll see what everyone voted for and see what the community's choice was. We've done this the last couple of years. It's been really good fun. So I will post that on Twitter, Discord, and in the description here. Just fill out the Google form. Again, you don't have to have the full 5 games, but whatever ones you've played on Switch, then put those in there. And we will we'll see what wins, what happens. So looking forward to hearing and seeing all that. Bally, we of course have some people who support us on patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife, where they can go for bonus episodes and fun things like that. We would like to thank some of our supporters, as well as introduce some new supporters as well.
Yes, thank you to our new patrons. We have Declan P and Brad W. Thank you both for your brand new patronage, but also thank you to our $10 tier plus patrons. They are Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK Alan, and Turtle. Thank you all for your support, and thank you to all of our patrons. We really, really, really appreciate the support you give the show, and we should definitely plug that, next week from when this episode comes out, we will be releasing our Nintendo Game of the Year list. So that'll be a joint list made by myself and MBZ, probably a top 5 games of the year, and that will be games that did not come out on Nintendo consoles. So there'll be lots to discuss and debate over on that show. Yeah,
absolutely. So check that out if you're so interested.
For a single $1.
Absolutely. You can obviously find us on various places on the internet. We're on Twitter and places, and you can follow us at TNL Podcast to get updates on the show, what's happening. That Google form that I mentioned for voting for Community Game of the Year. You can obviously find links to our Discord there, so if you want to join the community, hop in with a bunch of these fine folks who sent their lists for their GOTYTDACOTYs through our Discord as well. And you can also find our YouTube channel there, where you can listen if you're not a podcast app person. That is an option for you. Also, you can find me on Twitter at LordMBZ. Where can they find you, Bally?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91.
Good stuff. And you can also find the show in various places. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher. We are all over the shop. You can download us, review us, give us those 5 stars wherever you go. It would be a great fun time. We would enjoy it and appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
We got some nice stats on our Spotify.
Yes,
Wrapped.
Spotify Wrapped happened, didn't it?
Thank you to everyone who's started listening to us this year on Spotify, because apparently there's a bunch of you, which is good to see.
Absolutely. Always nice to see that every year, the Spotify Wrapped thing, which just shows our Spotify audience growing a lot more. I think more people listen through Spotify now, which is very cool. Not me. I would never do that. I think you and I have very fickle podcast taste, and the app that we use.
Oh God, we're going to be downloading and
it's just like
listening in
Skype,
that way.
Bally. It's just
Yeah,
exactly like
Skype.
last time. I'm like, I hate Pocket Cast in a lot of ways because it is way inferior to what it used to be, but it's still the best option I have for podcasts. Like, I just got this new phone. I was complaining to you. I didn't get to talk to you fully about it when we were chatting with Ali T, but holy shit, Pocket Cast need to sort out what they're doing when it comes to transferring stuff across from one phone to another, because I had to manually fucking go through and archive 5,000 episodes that were in my unplayed list, and I'm like, that breaks me. That fucking breaks me, because my unplayed list had to be 200, and I had to fucking whittle it down from 5,000 because Pocket Cast is just a mess. It's just a mess when you transfer.
You had 5,000 unplayed podcasts you were intending on listening
no,
to.
it wasn't me. It was Pocket Cast's fault. Basically, anything before 2019, it wasn't properly archived, so it was like it thought I hadn't listened to them, but I had, and so I had to it was a whole mess.
Yeah.
It took me at least like an hour to go through and just organize it and set it right.
Yeah, when I swapped phones, I had to manually resubscribe to every podcast. It was just like...
It's my least favorite thing.
If you're one of those people who listens to like 4 podcasts, it's fine. It's easy.
Yeah.
When you listen to... How many did I subscribe to? It's some ridiculous number.
I think my number this year was Spotify told me that I listened to... Not Spotify. My Pocket Cast Wrapped told me that I listened to 56 different shows this year.
56. Yeah, I'm
over
slightly
1,000
fewer shows,
episodes.
but I'm also apparently listening to more, which was scary. Insane amount.
Bally, I
I
realised
don't want to say. I can't say.
No, I know
number.
you don't want to say. I realised that you didn't post your stats last year either. It was just me. And Bally's just too afraid to put his stats out into the wild. Let me tell you, Bally did beat me in terms of number of hours by, let's say, a significant margin this time. So that was interesting. But Bally, I hand over the crown to you as the new podcast king.
I'll take it for this year.
Yeah.
We'll see who can wear the crown next year.
We will see indeed. But that will be far away for now. Thank you everybody for listening. We will be back in a couple of weeks' time with the final episode of the year, our game of the year.
I'm going to get my arguments ready.
Get your arguments ready.
I'm also going to try and beat Tears of the Kingdom in this time. So
and I'm going to try and beat Octopath Traveler too, Bally. So
that would make for a good discussion.
That would make for a very interesting discussion. So let's get on with it and let's get playing. And everyone, we'll see you very soon. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye. The musical interlude used on today's show was the main theme from Watermelon Game, otherwise known as Suika Game, developed by Aladdin X. That's the name of the developer, Aladdin X. Copyright Aladdin X 2021.